Okay, I'm starting the broadcast. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
There, buddy.
Hello.
Say hello.
Hello.
Say hello, Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
Thank you.
Say goodnight,
Perfect.
Dick.
Good night, Dick.
Oh, this is gonna be a good show. I can tell already.
I hope so. And we're not even drinking alcohol
Yet.
We really don't have any to drink.
No.
What?
But I do have some gin upstairs.
You can have
Oh,
that.
perfect.
Oh,
Ooh.
okay. I'm sorry. I don't have anything that Jeff likes.
It's okay.
I have no beer in the fridge.
No beer in the fridge.
I know.
Yeah, they do have Uber for that.
Yeah, they'll deliver it probably within like 20 minutes.
I still have to get back to the airport at some
Yeah, and
time.
Yeah.
I'm on a liver cleanse, actually.
Okay, good.
Right.
Yeah, no, I believe you.
2 days.
Right.
2 days, is that a cleanse? Officially
okay.
a cleanse?
After our mellow mushroom thing that night, that's it for as long
Until
as
the next time.
Exactly. Till the next
So I
time.
hear one crack.
Yeah, well, I'm not promising anything. That's
You're a day ahead of me.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
had so much pizza at Mellow Mushroom. I've went to the gym the last 3 days in a row.
Nice.
Strong work.
At least you can.
Nick, what are you doing?
He's making ugly faces.
If you could make the same face.
Actually, the moving face is the worst looking one. He is having too much fun with that.
His twin.
It's not
brother is
disturbing at all.
there. No.
Oops, sorry. Silent.
All right. Phone's on silent.
I should do that too. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Up. Was it something I said? Oh, you're trying to find your phone? Ah, okay. Well, it's in there. That's okay. If it's right here, no.
Mhm.
Okay. So hello, everybody in the chat room. I haven't even looked to see. Oh, wow. We got a lot of comments.
We got everyone here.
Wow, everybody. Hello, everybody
Everyone.
there and here. Nice. Okay. We have a special guest with me.
Where?
He's in the other room,
Okay.
in the bathroom.
Oh, hello.
Definitely special needs.
Yeah,
Thank you very little.
Wow. Wow.
that's hurtful. All right. Let's go over here to the recorder and make sure that it's on. And I guess since not everybody has recorders recording their local signal, I guess there's really no point in anybody
Yeah,
record.
sorry, I don't have it set up yet.
That's right. I don't
It's gonna
think
take me a little bit of time.
I don't think Rick has his total recorder thing downloaded
Yeah,
either.
I'm on my yeah.
Slackers.
You're right.
That's what she said.
I just picked that just to play something so I could see if there was signal coming. So somebody say something in the Hangout or the whatever, you people.
Huh?
You people.
Oh, us.
Something?
Hello.
Yes, people.
Something.
Okay, good. I'm getting
Us
signal
people?
there.
Yep.
Yes,
I'm
you
speaking.
people.
I'm speaking now.
Okay, now. See, the problem with that is once you tell them to do that, then they don't stop.
They don't shut up.
No,
Well, that's the idea. Is
Well, you asked us to stop. Or
Yeah,
to start.
exactly.
I didn't ask us to stop.
I
I
did.
would otherwise.
Oh, you did?
Not talk. But Jeff,
I didn't hear that part.
Mind. I'm so confused. Okay, and then let's make sure that we can hear this. Radio Roger, sound check, please.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
Wow.
That's loud.
and now I can't hear anything.
Okay.
What'd you say?
fine over here.
Let me
you know.
say something.
Yeah, it sounded fine to me too.
Yeah,
Wasn't
on
too
the
loud.
local, it's kind of loud.
No, that was loud.
Well,
Well, you're closer, Dana.
yeah, he's out of town. That's
Quite
like,
literally right down the road. If I'd known that, I would have been right next to you guys.
oh yeah. Well, I'm not sure we'd have room
Yeah,
actually.
really. As loud
It's already
as that was
kinda
in my
tight.
ears, you probably could have heard it without.
That's
Dana.
what she said.
Well, it's not like I'm doing very much.
Okay. Ear check. Checking 1, 2, 3. Eardrums. I guess Ian. It was loud for Ian too. Okay. Let me try it again.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
That better?
Ding.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Fine.
Much better. That was
All right.
perfect.
Excellent.
Same as the last time.
Okay.
Didn't ask you, Nick.
Oh, what I meant to do is to see if that was bumping up right there, that little
I have not
V
seen that
meter.
move.
You're listening to
There
the
it is.
Airline.
Okay, good. So it looks like it is no, it's recording now that I hit the little red button there. Okay, see that? See those tracks there? They're all nice and red. That means we're recording. Okay.
Yay.
Yay. Liz, in the control room, give me the thumbs up. And I think we're ready to go. Here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 427.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. Your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 28th of May, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your ride and it's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a Pakistani Airlines jet crashes before landing in Karachi. Delta Airlines first officer becomes incapacitated during an international flight. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, the Ian Palmer interviews part 3. Get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger. Flight 427 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an Emmy Award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in New York City. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, former U.S. Air Force pilot, now a pilot for a major legacy airline based in Atlanta, Georgia for the last 31 plus years. I'm joined today by my awesome co-hosts. I'm sorry, nope, we don't have any awesome co-hosts here today, but we do have from her lakeside home in the Carolinas. I'm kidding, of course. Doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot. Her name is Dr. Steph.
But not awesome anymore.
You're awesome.
Aw, so sad. Hey, Captain Jeff. Good to see you. Looking forward to the show today. It's going to be a good one. I can tell already.
Yes. And also joining us from his mobile studio in Cincinnati, Ohio. I think that's where you are.
No, Baltimore. Close enough.
Oh, okay. In Baltimore, Ohio. No, wait, that's not right either. He is a world traveler, airplane mechanic, right-wing cognoscenti, fitness hound, and international air freight captain. It's Miami and now Baltimore Rick.
Baltimore Rick. Baltimore, Ohio Rick. How's everybody doing? It's going to be a good one. Looking forward to it.
All right. And we have, we don't want that one. Here's the right one. From across the pond in his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London. It's Captain Nick.
That was perfect because we didn't hear a single thing that Nick said.
Until after
It was just actually perfect.
Shall I do that again?
Yes.
I'll shout this time, shall I? I said I'm outnumbered 5-1 this week, so I'm going to have trouble holding up my end.
Aha, that.
I'm not saying
That's
anything.
what she said.
All right. And also joining us from the Northwest Atlanta suburbs, barbecue master, motorcycle rider, yacht skipper, and underwater photographer and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to go ahead and put my seatbelts on because it's going to be one of those rides today, I'm sure.
Hang on to your
Bumpy.
hats. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Speaking of bumpy rides, and also joining us in Studio 1A with Captain Jeff, it's Captain Jeff. Another one. If you didn't have enough old gray-haired, mustached
Yes.
Captain Jeff's, well, now you got another one here. He is a 737 captain, former not RAF, USAF F-15 Eagle driver, and wow, so many more things. Great friend,
Oh, really.
Captain Jeff.
Thrilled being here. Kind of surprised, Jeff. So just glad to make it today.
Sweet. Hey, you know what? I think we should do something they call the news. Here we go.
Stand by for news.
Did you just cough?
Yes.
We're going to have to do the whole thing over. Just kidding. I'm going to, all this right now, it's going to be completely cut out.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I started 10 minutes late.
That's actually pretty good, isn't it?
I'm used to an hour.
Shut up. And I mean that in the nicest way.
That's a pip song.
All right, we're going to start off with something that has been prominent in aviation news. And it was this crazy crash of an A320, a Pakistan International Airlines A320 at Karachi on May 22nd, 2020. Let's see, they were performing flight 8303 from Lahore or Lahore. Help me up with that one, anybody?
Lahore. I think.
Lahore was right the first time.
Oh, okay. Lahore to Karachi, and with 91 passengers, a crew had aborted the approach to Karachi due to problems with extension of the nose landing gear. In fact, when the crew read the landing clearance for runway 25 left back, the sounds of a master warning can be heard. Of course, we're not sure that's the reason. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Anyway, it crashed. They're still trying to figure out what happened here, but they do know that the aircraft came in from the east at a pretty high rate of descent, and they did touch down on runway 25 left at Lahore, but looks like the engine cowlings touched down on the runway, and they performed a go around. They went back around, and the engines failed, and they did not make it back to the airport a second time around, and crashed in a heavily populated area, urban area of Karachi. And I'm sorry, I think I said Lahore. They did not land at Lahore. They landed at Karachi. Rescue and recovery services were at the crash site. Took about 5 hours to put out the fires after the crash. Let's see, I'm scrolling down. I don't know if we have the very latest information or not, but I'm going to stop talking and let some of my educated and awesome co-hosts chip in with maybe some updates on this investigation.
Not everybody at the same time, huh?
No,
I figured Nick was going to chime in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say I've been to Karachi. I've flown into that airport a couple of times, and in my experience, Pakistani controllers are pretty good. Radar vectors to the ILS is fine. I looked at the approach chart for the runway in question here. Airport sea level, a little bit of high terrain to the north. Really nothing that would jump out at me from the get go. I did look at some of the data, the ADS, automatic defense surveillance data available, as Captain Jeff mentioned. High rate of descent into the runway during the first approach there. And issues with the landing gear. I don't know what the how the landing gear warning system works on Airbus airframes, but on Boeing's, you basically have two conditions. One is if you are under 800 feet radio altitude, with one, if your thrust lever's at idle, that's going to generate an alarm, and then the other one is landing flap 25 or flap 30 with landing gear up, regardless of altitude. That'll also generate an alarm. There's other nuances there that are fleet specific. But I mean, other than that, I really don't know how you get to a position like the one these pilots found themselves in. I'd like to really hear what Nixter has to say, being the Airbus representative here.
Well, the Airbus is two warnings in a very similar way, Rick. One is based on the EGPWS. That'll shout too low gear when you haven't got the gear down on the other crew. So aircraft generated, which is a warning, and not just a bell that sounds. The landing gear system lights up, and there's a big red arrow there indicating you've got a problem. And the master warning will go off. A big caption will come up. So there's plenty of visual cues. So I don't think this is an Airbus problem. I think you'll find that this is a crew problem. And I think you'll find that the crew managed to make this approach completely ignoring what was going on around them in the cockpit. And they tried to land the airplane with all these warnings going. And I think we all know that when you end up in a very stressful, rushed approach, you're not doing your checklist properly because you're high and you're fast and you're desperately trying to get everything out so you can land. I don't know why you would want to land at the on an approach that is blatantly unstable, but it appears they did. But it's very easy to shut out the whole world and become so focused on your goal of putting the airplane on the threshold that you can ignore the most blatant of warnings. And we've heard aircraft flying into the ground with the pull-up warnings going, and people just ignore them. And it is one of the failings of the human in that our brain, when it becomes maxed out, is quite capable of turning off your ears or becoming tunnel visioned almost and ignoring things that would normally get your attention. I think we're going to find that human factors are going to be at the basis of this, certainly the first approach.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I don't think there was any indication at all that there was any problem with the airplane, but with the crew flying the airplane, I think everything is pointing toward. But of course, they're still investigating it. But I do remember hearing a couple of conversations from Airbus pilots and the like that were saying that this chime that we hear in one of the air traffic control transmission or communications from the airplane to ATC, they just automatically jumped on the fact, well, that chime means that it's the gear's not down and locked. Well, I think that's what do they call that? A high level chime or a high level or something level 3?
From memory, there is a specific bell for the gear. Mm-hmm. It's not the same as the master warning. Now, someone's going to correct me because my memory isn't perfect, and it's been, well over a year now since I was even in an Airbus cockpit. So, but I mean, regardless whether it's a master warning or a specific chime for the gear.
Captain Al says 750-foot radio altimeter master warning for gear, then lower down for EGPWS will trigger.
The question I have is, and I don't know, Captain Al might be able to chime in on this, is this flight from about 4 minutes out was at 10,000 feet, and they had vertical descent rates of in excess of 8,000 feet per minute or 6,000 feet per minute. Get which one it was.
Yeah, but it was all like around 7,000, I think.
Somewhere right around. It was ridiculous all the way down. And not only that, their airspeed was in excess of at one point below 10,000, well, a little bit above 250 knots, but pretty much the whole way down over 200 knots. So I don't know if airspeed plays into this system on the Airbus or not. I would imagine it wouldn't. Below 750 feet, but they touched down 3 times on the runway with the engines.
Mm-hmm. So, and I guess the question is, did they ever get the gear down to begin with, or did they have it down and then when they attempted to go around, another report that I heard, or there was a rumor that the first officer had retracted the landing gear before the airplane was actually flying?
Wouldn't explain why the airplane touched on the engines 3 times on the runway and halfway down the runway to start off with. I mean, I think it's taxiway D is in Dixie. That is pretty much where the last touchdown point is. That's halfway down, well over halfway down the runway.
And a lot of energy to dissipate, absolutely.
A lot of energy. And if the nose gear is what was indicated here was the problem, then obviously the mains would have touched down and the engines would not have contacted the ground. So the high rate of descent, the high altitude, the high rate of descent, the high airspeed, And the unstable approach, I agree with Nick, and the pilots probably became so focused on just trying to get this airplane on the ground instead of just doing the smart thing and go around well before they even got close to the runway, because they were just, I don't think they did anything right here. It's pretty scary that an Airbus that is so well designed for, let's say, second and third world countries for operation, that is supposed to be self-protectant in a lot of ways, that these guys just ignored almost everything. And I think it's going to be nothing but pilot error.
Yeah, I think so. And we were talking about this, a couple of weeks ago, about how sometimes on heavy crews, the kind of flying that I've been doing for the last couple of years, you find yourself with a third and even fourth pilots sitting behind you during the takeoff and landing phases of the flight, and the seat that's behind the captain and the first officer is right in the middle. We call that the smart seat for that very reason, because when you find yourself, as Nick said, in a high stress, high workload type situation, you tend to just shut everything else out and get focused on attempting or achieving in this case a landing that turned out to be not the right thing to do. Another thing, to Dana's point, about the landing gear not being down, and then I'll touch on what stabilized approach means, because we're talking about that, and I'm not sure everybody really understands what that means. Just like flaps, the landing gear has a maximum speed at which you can extend it, and a maximum speed at which you can fly with it in the extended position. It's happened to me many times coming into, say, for example, runway 33, the 33s in Seoul and Incheon in South Korea, where ATC tends to leave you a little high. And one procedure, not procedural, but one tool that you have is, in fact, the landing gear. So if you find yourself high on the path, you can put the speed brakes out, you can start putting flaps out and all that. But the landing gear is also a very good tool to get down quickly. If they were above, I don't know what the speed for the landing gear extension is on Airbuses, but
usually 250 knots.
250.
But there's a speed switch. In mine, it was about 280. I think on the 320, it's around 265. That isolates the hydraulics, so you can't put it down much above that anyway.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And on Boeing's, you don't have a hydraulic isolation for the landing gear. You do have one for the flaps, however, on the 747-8 and the 777-787. So that's another thing to look at there. The high speed, the inability to put the landing gear down, and then talking about stabilized approaches. What is stabilized approach? So stabilized approach criteria basically means that we as flight crews have to get to certain gates along the approach within certain parameters, and the big one, the important one. So for example, talking about it, and it's not really a set gate, but it's a good cross check. For example, you get to 40 miles from the field. A good idea is to get to 40 miles at 10,000 feet and 250 knots. That's one gate. That's going to give you a nice managed decelerated approach profile. The energy of the airplane is going to be, not out of control. You're going to have plenty of buffer both on the high side and the low side of the 240 knots. Obviously, you're below 10,000 feet. You want to stay below 250. If you need to get a little down a little faster, you increase the speed to 250. Bring the speed brakes out, bring the nose of the airplane down. If you're getting too low, bring the speed back, the airplane nose goes up. So you can manage the energy, because flying an airplane really in the approach environment of an airport is all about managing the energy. You don't want to dive and drive and drag the airplane at 3,000 feet prior to glide slope intercept, but you don't want to be 3,000 feet above the path either. So it's about managing that energy and staying within that lane there. Now, the big gate that we talk about as airline pilots, as far as flying a safe approach is concerned, is the 1,000-foot gate. And the 1,000-foot gate, basically what that means is that at 1,000 feet, for the approach to be stabilized or stable, which is an actual call out in our airline, and I'm sure other airlines as well, you have to be fully configured for landing. That means the landing gear has to be down. The flaps have to be in the landing position. The thrust has to be spooled up, so on speed. The speed, your approach speed, can't be any faster than your reference speed plus 15 or 20, depending on the airline, and no less than reference speed plus minus 0. And all your checklists have to be complete. If you get to that point and you're not stable, any of those parameters isn't complete or isn't done, then you have to do a go around. And it's a no fault policy. You have to go around, you go around. You can always come back, like the song says. So
Yeah,
that's what stabilize means.
And brilliant, and you know, as much as you can manage your energy, there are scenarios, and I think this may have been one, that no matter what you do, how much you throw out to try to decrease or diminish that energy with the gear out and everything else, if that's possible, there are scenarios where you just have too much energy. You cannot get rid of it, and you just have to go
laws
around.
of physics.
Exactly. So
Exactly right.
you have to make that decision early on, and I think it seems, we don't know yet because we don't know all the facts, that they got way behind the ball on this one and got to the point where, yeah, I can do, I've done this before, I can make it. But it didn't work out.
Yeah,
and
another thing I was saying, I'm sorry, the last thing I'll say here, I do know because I remember asking about this, and I think Captain Al confirmed it, on Airbuses on the 320s, as long as you have the autopilot on, the autopilot engaged, you put out your spoilers, and they only come out 50%. The only way for you to have full spoiler deployment on the 320 series is to disconnect the autopilot. That's the only way you'll have full spoiler deployment. Now, I'd love for him to cross check me on that, to stay above 50%, but I'm almost certain that's the case on the 320s. So that'd be another factor, perhaps.
Yeah, and something else to what you were talking about, Nick, is the gates, and this is kind of lost in the world of modern aviation, especially with Jeff and I. Even with the equipment and technology we had on the 88, I found that was lost as well. But Jeff and I can, and I'm sure Captain Jeff sitting next to Jeff can all relate to this, is the 3-1. All right, so it's something that's always in my mind, and we have become slaves to the technology, so we don't really tend to think about the 3-1 as much as we should. And clearly, obviously, they were well above the 3-1, but 3-1 basically is for every mile you get 300 feet, right? So you're 3 miles out, you're 900 feet. If you're 5 miles out, you're 1,500 feet. 30 miles out, you're 10,000 feet, right? So that's a good rule of thumb, and it works from time you start descent all the way down to the ground. So if they tell you to go from flight level 350 to 250, 3-1, 10,000 feet, right? You can do the math on that real quick. So anyways, that's it's pretty sad. And what I was trying to get towards is that the fact that I don't know, with them being such high speed, whether they were in tune enough to, because the limitations on the airspeed for the flaps 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think it is on the Airbus, they were right around the limit speeds and in excess of the limit speed. So either one or two things happened. They either never got the flaps out, or they exceeded limitations on the aircraft. And I don't know how.
One is 230 on the 320.
Yeah, I think it was 220. Captain Al can maybe correct me on that. I think it's 220 or 230. But anyways, they were above that speed for quite a bit of the time. And if they didn't get the flaps out, how does that affect the landing gear warning system on the Airbus? I don't know.
Well, it certainly doesn't affect the EGPWS one. And we could hear that the landing warning system was going in the ATC transmission. So obviously they had it active. The aircraft was telling them. So I don't think that. Really
I just heard ding, ding, ding. Was that the landing gear, or was that the flaps?
It's the master caution. It is a warning that you would get if you got a fire, or in this case, if you got a landing gear, a glance down at the ECAM, and it will tell you what the warning is. But it's a master warning, and the gear will be there, gear not down.
Is master warning also for overspeeding the flaps?
You'll be into the barber's pole. I think it's got a different noise, but we're all talking about not specifics here. We're talking about a general lack of awareness. As soon as you get any warning, you look in and you try and assess what the problem is. I don't think the guy was misunderstanding warnings, whether it be flaps or gear. I think he just got so far behind the aircraft, and he had one aim in mind, which was to put it on the ground, that he was more going to ignore anything. I don't think he was in a position that he was going to acknowledge any problems he was having. He had become so single-minded in
Right.
his aim, most of us would step back and throw an orbit in, or if we had a decent first officer, he would step in and go, "We ain't going to do this, Skipper. We need an orbit. We need to go around. We need to think about this and do it again." But neither of them appeared to have done this.
In something to what Rick was talking about, the third guy in the middle, very much the training world is you get a much better view than being the two guys in the seat. So when an instructor is sitting there and evaluating and looking to what two pilots are doing, it's very easy for an instructor to be able to see what, kind of take the whole world view, whereas the two pilots sitting in the seats get so focused. So that's just another verification that these guys probably were just so focused. They just didn't see the whole world view.
And I tell you, in training scenarios, I mean, you get off and you step off out of the box, and after a high workload situation, you debrief with your FO, your captain, or whatever the case may be, and you start going, "What the hell were we thinking?" It's just
how did we let ourselves get into that?
No, it's like Nick was saying. The human brain prioritizes the most pressing task at hand, and everything else falls by the wayside. And it's really hard to train your brain not to be focused on just one thing at a time.
I know on the Boeings, though, that we do not get a warning if you overspeed the flaps, even if you're in the barber pole. I don't know if that's different on the bus, but unfortunately, speaking from experience, I've oversped the flaps and there's no clacker.
Yeah, there's no.
You'll get a warning
either.
in
The captain now says you do get the same oral warning with the flaps.
Yeah.
On the 777, however, on when you are above flap placard speed for flap one, the system will not let you extend flaps at all. Just like the landing.
It's got the
gear
lockout on the.
Yeah, so the hydraulic system is.
Well, I'm assuming the 320 is similar to the 330, 340. In some flap settings, if you try and overspeed the flap will automatically move up to the setting above to try and protect you. And then if you slow back down again, it'll extend. So
I
it
believe
does its best. But
is that for landing flap only, or is that for every notch of flaps?
well, I'm pretty sure it's 3 into 2. It's probably full into 3. I don't think 2 goes into 1.
Because we have a flap load release system on every Boeing I've ever flown from the 6, 7.
It's called the same thing.
It's the same thing. In fact, that Southwest incident they had in Midway when they came in a little hot, they actually, one of the reasons why they ended up floating a little bit further on down the runway than they thought is because as they crossed the threshold, the flaps were on flap relief mode, and as the airspeed kept dropping, the flaps went out of relief mode, increasing that curvature of the wing, making them float and touching down further on down the runway. That was an issue with flap load relief, but that's what it's there for. I mean, you're supposed to, stay below that flap placard speed for that not to happen. So,
the bottom line is I think it's pretty scary that this sophisticated of an airplane was flown the way it was flown, and these guys just completely and totally ignored every warning they got. That's the scary part.
Well, it kind of goes back to, if you want to talk about task saturation stuff, look at the Lion Air accident with the MAX. Same kind of thing. They had more bells and whistles going off than they knew what to do with, and they just lost track of what was the priorities. And you get focused in on one thing, and it killed them.
And Captain Al said the continuous repetitive chime The ding, ding, ding is the same for many faults. Only by reading ECAM will you know what the issue is. So we don't actually know. I mean, they may have had another issue in the cockpit that was beyond the landing gear or the flaps. I mean, who knows what was actually going on that they may have been focusing on.
And
So
the thing about these particular types of alarms, the dings and the Airbuses and the master warning and Boeings, the only way really to get rid of these alarms is obviously by hitting the master warning reset button right in front of you. I'm talking Boeings. But the only way to get rid of the actual condition, the actual message you'd get on ICAS, which is the equivalent to ECAM on Airbuses, ICAS is Engine Indicating Crew Alerting System, as where ECAM is Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitoring, if I'm not mistaken, is to actually get rid of whatever is causing that alarm. You look at the condition, and the only way to get rid of that is by addressing it. And if it's a fire, putting the fire out. If you're the gear's not down below 800 feet and you're at thrust idle, put the gear down, stuff like that. So the only way to get rid of a master warning level alarm is by addressing it, either by correcting it by putting the gear down, for example, or by running the checklist and getting rid of the failure that way. So
Well, I don't think on a Boeing you can silence the gear warning horn.
No, you can't.
The only way to get that horn to shut off.
I'm talking, for example, that's what I'm saying. You silence it by putting the landing gear down.
Yeah,
by doing.
Say for example, if you disconnect the autopilot and you only hit it once, the alarm's going to go off. But the only way to get rid of that is by hitting it a second time. That's what I'm saying.
So Nick,
Yeah,
a good instance of as your father talked about, just light that cigarette and take a moment and regroup. And was there anything so pressing here that they had to?
I don't think.
These guys didn't have enough time to smoke a cigarette on this one, I think.
Yeah.
Or
the
wind
fact
his watch.
that, they persisted the approach when they were clearly not really
at
in
some
a
point you
position
ran out
to
of
get
time to
in.
do that, but
Yeah. And they started getting warnings. That's the time to, go sit back for a minute, go, what the hell's going on here? Let's go around and we'll sort it out. We haven't really covered the ultimate cause of the crash. Having touched down on the engine pods, they most likely did sufficient damage to the engines to cause them to fail. It didn't last very much longer afterwards. I think they probably did about 3 touchdowns on those pods. Now, the danger is at the bottom of those engines where the gearboxes lie. They're not smack on the bottom. They're actually offset to one side. But if you smack the bottom of your engine on the ground, there's 2 things that can happen. You can either distort the engine such that the blades start to rub. And these modern engines have such fine tolerances for the tips of the blades clearing the inside of the cowling, and that's an efficiency factor. So the closer those blades are to the inside of the cowling, the more efficient the air passing through will be, because there's no escape. It has to go around the blade and not underneath it. So there's that. Either the cowlings became distorted and the blades started to rub, or they physically damaged the gearbox, which controls, it's got the engine oil, the FADEC, all the systems basically to run the engine. Now they managed to get enough power out of the engines to climb and get 2,000 feet effectively downwind. But that's when, more or less simultaneously, by the sounds of it, both engines failed. At that point, they had the gear down. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not quite sure why they had to put the gear down at that point. I mean, all right, you could, if you're flying a circuit, I guess you're going to put the gear down downwind, but with the gear down and without engines, they just didn't have enough performance to reach the runway. You see a movie of them coming in, and this is credit to Airbus. The aircraft is at a very high nose angle. It's obviously they're trying to stretch the glide, and the aircraft's not stalling because it's being protected. At least I assume they've got full protection still available to them. So that was the ultimate cause of the crash. The fact that they touched down on the cowlings damaged the engine sufficient they couldn't make a circuit all the way around and land it back on. But the reason they did that, of course, goes back to our initial discussion.
Exactly right, and to your point there, Nick, obviously the engine's quitting. In one of the pictures, you can see the ram air turbine deployed, telling you that in fact the engine's hat failed. Now I don't know how the rat works on Airbuses.
Probably in this case on a double AC generator failure.
So yeah, so it's electrical, not hydraulic.
Well, it is a hydraulic rat, but the hydraulic system will power an electrical generator, an emergency generator to power the whole of the aircraft. So you get the rat gives you hydraulic power, and the hydraulics give you electrical power to continue to glide the aircraft. Yeah,
similar to
as well as batteries, of course.
Now, this is a stupid question. Could they have had enough of a vertical descent rate when they hit the runway if the gear were down to scrape the engines?
I wouldn't have thought so. I've never heard
I
of
wouldn't
that.
think so either. I think it would end up
No.
driving. You'd bend the airplane and drive the mains right through the wings. So
And I think there would be marks of the gear as well on the run.
Yeah, and I mean, Airbus is being certified in the States as well by the FAA. They have to comply with part 25, FAR part 25 landing. The landing section of it says that you're supposed to touch down at max landing weight at 800 feet a minute, and the airplane's supposed to take it, and at max takeoff weight at 300 feet a minute, and the airplane's supposed to take it.
So my whole point here is that there is no way that landing gear was down, and they touched down 3 times on that runway.
I agree with you 100%. I think
there's no way. And they went ahead and extended the landing gear at some point after they went around. And my thought maybe to the point that the FO didn't really retract the landing gear as much as when they did the go around, he extended the landing gear. That's just my thought process and why that landing gear at that point would be down.
Yeah, we don't know enough. I think really because
I know we don't.
The someone threw a theory out that they'd had the gear down, they decided to go around, the FO lifted the gear, and then they settled onto the pods. Now they settled on the pods halfway down the runway, so that's feasible. If they touched down in the normal position, decided they were too fast to land and decided to go around. One of them did one action, one of them did a different action, decided to try and stay down. It is feasible, I suppose, that you could have ended up in that way. It doesn't sound right. This whole approach was just so poorly flown that I don't think you can put either pilot in the correct frame of mind. Liz is asking, wouldn't they have been better to stay down? Considering all the previous mistakes that undoubtedly made, Liz, I don't think they were in a position to make any reasonable judgment calls at that point. I don't think they could have done anything, quite honestly. And it wouldn't have surprised me at this point.
I mean, yeah, I can see where maybe there was a bounced landing. Spoilers, of course, would come up, and that would be an issue. But as soon as you bring up the throttles to go, or flight levers on the Airbus, correct? If once you bring those up, the spoilers should retract. And then if in fact they had bounced a little bit, and the FO, they decide to go around, he immediately, or whoever was pilot monitoring, let me say that, not necessarily FO, pilot monitoring pulled the landing gear up, and I could see where that would occur. So that is a possibility, certainly.
Well, the good news for us is that they were able to recover the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorders. And I'm sure that a lot of the answers to these questions we're having right now will be answered eventually.
Yep. Very much so. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But it's fun speculating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
All right. In other words, it was a really kind of botched approach and landing. And sadly,
terrible situation.
Yeah, a bunch of people died. So again, I'm sure we'll be talking about it for a while, especially when we start getting some good info regarding it. All right, let's move on to this one. This was an interesting one from the Aviation Herald. An iAero Boeing 737-800, registration November 820 Tango, performing flight 3518 from Victorville, California to San Diego, California, departed Victorville's runway 17 and completed the seemingly uneventful flight with a safe landing on San Diego's runway 27 about 41 minutes after departure. Following landing, it was discovered parts had come off the vertical tail's leading edge as well as left side in flight. On March 23rd, 2020, the NTSB announced the occurrence occurred at Victorville. Okay, that was the origin. That's interesting. And was rated an accident and is being investigated by the NTSB, stating that the investigators will use data provided by various entities, including but not limited to the Federal Aviation Administration and or the operator, and will not travel in support of this investigation to prepare this aircraft accident report. Kind of an unusual statement. They're not going to travel to, so there must be some obvious evidence of what actually happened here, although they don't tell us what that might be. Now, it would be really nice if we had somebody here on the panel that knows something, maybe has flown or is currently flying the 737.
If you look at the picture,
Well, that's right. Captain Jeff does.
If you look at the picture, and if you can't imagine, the 737 has a very long dorsal spine that extends forward from a normal tail position that you'd see on like on a 777 or an Airbus, about a third of the length of the fuselage forward towards the wings. And that's the portion of the tail that came off, except for the panels on the sides. This is kind of screaming corrosion to me, but I can understand why they didn't know it wasn't there. That design has been there since the very first 7.3, and it's probably there for lateral stability, just like the CRJs have the dorsal fins on the belly. This is a ventral fin, single one. So when I saw this, the first thing I'm thinking the first thing I looked up is Victorville and MRO, but then I found that it was a passenger flight, so it's not coming out of heavy maintenance. In fact, the C check was done like a year prior, which is the major maintenance overhauls. So I'm thinking corrosion over time. This came off. Having flown a 7.3 without the yaw damper on, it's not that hard to do. It's kind of a handful. You kind of feel like you're sailing a boat. You know, you're yo ho, the pirate slave for me kind of thing. Yeah. And but I'm sure the yaw damper was just working its butt off to keep that thing straight and level. And they probably didn't notice it all in the cockpit. I imagine the FAs in the back, the flight attendants, probably heard some extra wind noise just by that big flat face of that ventral fin had come off, and just the buffeting around the hole in the side of the tail. But I don't think the pilots would have had much impact on how the airplane actually flew. The yaw damper would have corrected for 99% of it, probably.
There's not a dorsal fin missing light?
No.
No master caution for that.
No alarm for that one.
Ding, ding, dings.
No,
How long is that bit of kit there, Jeff?
Pardon?
How long is that whole piece?
It's got to be about 15, 20 feet forward of that door at least.
Oh, so someone could have a new flagpole outside their house.
Oh, it's tall too. I mean, you can see how big
Yeah.
that flat plate there. It's
Just Google a picture of a 737-800. You know,
and you'll see how it's good piece of metal came off that airplane.
And what's interesting, though, that the FAA said, or the NTSB said, well, this occurrence happened at Victorville. So is that implying that this happened even before they took off?
Yeah,
probably happened while they were rolling down the runway.
Could be.
And I think this is a ferry flight, so I doubt they had any flight attendants on board.
No, it was passenger operation.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yes.
They had actual passengers on board?
Yes.
Yes.
Because that was my first thought. What Colonel Jeff said. It's the fact that it's an MRO. I've been to Victorville many times, and for heavy maintenance stuff, and it's like, parts are flying off. There's going to be an AMP in trouble here.
That was the immediate assumption I think that everybody made. And then we find that was just a stopping point they had flown a couple of places before they got to Victorville, or maybe just one. The turnaround time at Victorville was 51 minutes? It was under an hour, and then they continued to San Diego.
Yeah, because I was thinking it was either coming out of maintenance or it had been sitting there in storage because of the shutdown. But neither one of those applies here. It was actually passengers on board, full crew. And they didn't know it until they landed in San Diego. So somebody's got a big chunk of metal in their yard.
Okay, so the big long bit at the front, that's fair enough. How about the two smaller bits, Jeff? Did they get blown out air pressure, do you think, or what?
Well, you can see the holes in the side of in that flat plate. I'm thinking just probably air pressure coming through there. Probably just again corrosion on those, and the torquing just didn't hold those plates in place. and the screws just stripped out.
Because those aren't expected to kind of get pressure from that
Yeah.
side of the skin. It's the other side that is supposed
Yeah.
to be receive pressure.
That's very
Interesting. I'm trying to work out how it's actually attached to the fuselage because most of that seems to be air.
It is, and I actually, when I was doing some research on this, I saw a video of a 7.3 having the tail put on. It was an LL jet, and it's actually hoisted up on a crane, and that whole piece slides into like a dovetail, tongue and groove kind of contraption. It was hard to make it out on the video, so I'm not sure quite how it attaches, but it's attached to the spine of the airplane in some way. It looked like a lot of connections.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's impressive, and it looks like, oh my gosh, the thing is going to fall off. But I don't think there was any fear of that happening. It's just that probably created a lot more drag and a lot more fuel flow than they're used to.
Now, had there been an asymmetrical thrust situation, that might have been a little different, because really the reason why that piece was put there, and the reason why, as Jeff said, the 7.3s had that since the beginning, is because they're in flight testing, they figured out that the tail need a little bit extra help to keep that directional control, which is why this airplane has that. CRJs have the ventral fin. The old 720s had that old ventral fin on the under the tail cone. It's all for directional control.
I can tell you, unless you're at a really like max power heavy weight, you don't need the full rudder to control an engine out on the airplane. And from what the picture shows, I can't see any damage to the actual rudder itself, just the elevator. I can see a dent in the leading edge of the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stabilizer there. Yep.
I can't see any visible damage to the rudder itself. So I don't think they might have noticed a little extra rudder, but I don't know if it's something they really paid attention to at the time that it happened.
Well, and Jeff is talking about the yacht dampener, and the yacht dampener is a system that we have because these airplanes with swept back wings have a tendency to kind of roll and yaw because it's just the way the wings are set up and the aerodynamics around it, and to kind of dampen that movement there, the rudder counteracts it and kind of nulls it out. And different airplanes work different ways. Some airplanes use the inertial system to sense that roll and dampen it out. Other airplanes use other systems. That's basically all a yaw damper does. Is it just basically yampers the yaw produced by the swept back wing configuration.
Is that like a shimmy damper?
Yeah, shimmy damper. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I'm looking at this picture of the leading edge of the left side, the stabilizer horizontal stab, and I'm thinking, well, I guess I see a dent there, but it looks pretty normal to me on the airplane that I fly when I do my walk arounds.
Have some extra dents along the
leading edge.
You do walk arounds?
It doesn't look normal to me.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it looked a little. Just a little.
I did see the coal truck pull up to the airplane this morning in Pittsburgh.
Yes, we had plenty of coal for the flight. We'll learn more about that in a minute. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Anyway, hopefully this might be one of those where we never hear anything else about this, so I hope we do, but interesting. Definitely looks kind of odd, doesn't it?
Well, if it's classed as an accident, there will be a report eventually.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, good.
We'll hear back from this. Absolutely.
So hopefully we'll revisit this when we.
I just want to know where that piece. I mean, that's a bunch of open land and desert stuff on that flight path. So
someone's going to make themselves a really nice desk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Go out and go searching for it.
Let's go.
But it sounds like it'll be all corroded. Blah.
Yeah.
Hey, that'll buff out.
Yeah. Right. Good one. All right. Finally, in the news notebook, we have this again from the Aviation Herald, Simon's awesome site. Delta Airlines Boeing 777-200 registration 702DN performing flight 3343 from Frankfurt, Maine, Germany to Chicago O'Hare, Illinois, USA. Was en route at flight level 400, about 60 nautical miles northeast of Moncton, New Brunswick. I had to think of what
Nailed it.
Usually they don't say new as long as I did. New Brunswick, when the first officer became incapacitated. The captain called the relief first officer to the flight deck and diverted the aircraft to Moncton for a safe landing about 15 minutes later. 15 minutes later. They were at 40,000 feet. Wow. The
That's
first
crazy.
officer was taken to a hospital. The Canadian TSB reported the captain summoned the relief first officer to the flight deck, and together they provided first aid to the first officer, including, again, starting at 40,000 feet, 15 minutes, they're on the ground. While all this is happening, they used an automated external defibrillator, there we go, to stabilize the first officer. After diversion to and landing in Moncton, the first officer was transported for medical treatment. The condition of the first officer is currently unknown, although I think somebody in the comments here said something about the fact that he is doing okay. But
Oh, that's great. I mean,
Good.
Anytime you have to use an AED on someone, that's not a good sign. If you're actually actively using it, that means you have an abnormal heart rhythm that needs to be shocked back to normal.
of course, I could be wrong. Maybe that was another incident I was reading.
Yeah. Well, we'll be hopeful about it.
Yeah.
Until we know for certain.
So that seems like they had their hands full. This was one of those flights I think that Delta was doing, not a passenger service, but the PPE transport. And so it was just, I believe, I don't know if they had flight attendants in the back.
It was just the flight crew.
Pushers. I think it was just the cockpit crew. On
That's
board.
the reason why they get on the ground so fast. They didn't have to worry about anybody in the back.
No complaints.
No complaints.
But still,
Wouldn't you normally have someone doing fire checks in the back?
so
Jeff?
I would assume that would be the case, but perhaps maybe all they were doing was carrying it under. I don't know. I don't know the details of this. It doesn't say in this article from the Aviation Herald, but I guess if you didn't have any cargo in the passenger cabin itself, you wouldn't require flight attendants with extinguishers and such. So I'm just guessing. I don't know.
But yeah,
Interesting.
40,000 feet in 15 minutes. Man.
Pretty
Sounds
impressive.
like
it brings to
skydiving
mind
operation.
the fact that when we are trying to put a defibrillator on a passenger and shock them, we're not allowed to do it, actually apply the shock, when the seatbelt signs are on, or if you're in turbulence, or if you're on the final part of the approach, etc. So, and the reason for this is, of course, if the patient moves, just
You
as
can shock
you're
someone
trying to
else.
shock them, you can shock somebody else. Now,
Yeah.
Steph probably knows all about that. She probably has been shocked all the time. But it just occurs to me that you've got one bloke flying it, one bloke is incapacitated, and one bloke can apply the shock. If it moved and touched the seat or the other, you could have ended up with two people incapacitated. I don't know. Perhaps they weren't applying shocks. Perhaps they
They may not have been. They may have just had it on for, you can have it on, and you can have it on and have it working. And if it's analyzing the rhythm and it doesn't advise a shock, you're not going to shock. You still have the AED on.
That's
and
what
still
that's what I'm
considered.
hoping.
And they
were
could have just been
putting it on.
doing, whatever first aid or CPR was actually required in the moment. It doesn't actually say what the issue was. Anytime you're using that, you assume there's some sort of cardiac concern, especially if they're incapacitated, if they're not breathing normally, or if you can't find a normal pulse. But yeah, we really don't know the actual details there.
No, it's just an interesting thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't know that so every 3 months we get these modules that we have to go through. One of them is talks about the use of this defibrillator machine here, and I didn't know that you'll put it on and it shows you how to do it and all that, but I didn't know that the thing actually monitors and analyzes whether it should shock you or not. It's like I thought you put it on there, you press the button, and it shocks you regardless.
Nope.
So-
And in between, you're doing rounds of CPR, so it's meant to do with 2-minute cycles of CPR. Yeah, and it'll tell you when it's ready to analyze, and it wants you to step back. And it really is made for the bystander who is there to do CPR. They try and make it as simple as possible. So
Which really means it's just pilot proof. So,
yeah, they tried to make it pilot proof, definitely. But that's to say, this is my plug here. If you're not already trained in CPR, they do at least here in the United States, have community CPR classes where they'll teach you just compression only CPR and the use of an AED, and that can really be life-saving. So if you don't have that training, would highly encourage you to seek it out. The American Red Cross and other similar organizations offer it.
Excellent. A nice plug there for that sort of thing. Thank you, Steph. Dr. Steph. I did read the comment in the comments for this particular incident on the Aviation Herald, except that the title of the comment is "I hope," and then the body of the comment is "First officer is in good shape by now." So I guess what this person is saying, I hope that the first officer is in good shape by now.
Kinda what
So
it
they
sounds like.
don't know.
We don't know. Oh well.
Yeah.
Very good.
And
Has
thankfully,
anyone
it was
calculated their rate of descent? 15 minutes from 40,000 feet.
I have not.
2,600 feet a minute.
That's
It's not bad.
not too
Constant.
bad. Yeah,
No.
actually,
I
that's
mean,
my
to add
normal rate.
to
of
that, you have to add, I mean, if you're going straight in, then you have to add a deceleration segment and all that. But still, I'm going to say 3,000 feet a minute all the way.
Yeah.
Which
Cool.
is not
All right. Well, that's enough.
not a wild descent.
No, it's
no,
not.
hardly.
And I think we should make. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yep. Go ahead.
I think we should just make the point that all pilots are trained to do single pilot operations when necessary. So, with incapacitated first officer and the other first officer attending to him, it's quite the captain's quite capable of landing the airplane on its own, as the first officer would have been had the captain been incapacitated. So these things are practiced regularly in the simulator. So you mustn't think that he was doing something particularly unusual.
And it makes the good point that it is possible for a pilot to become incapacitated. So if you have single pilot operations or you're pushing for that, it's something that you really have to consider and take into account how you'd mitigate that unlikely but possible scenario. I'm just saying, and we'll move on.
You're going to ruin our plans, Steph, for one pilot or no pilot airplanes. Don't point
Am
that
I?
out.
talking to you right now.
Good. Glad
I'll
to,
be
glad to
walking.
ruin it. Glad to ruin it.
Yeah, me too. All right. Now, guess what? It is time to get to know us. And if you're watching the video, it's a wonderful compilation picture of the crew. Thank you,
Completely
Nick, for that.
accurate. I mean, that's all you have to look at to get to know us, I think.
Exactly. I mean, what else really is there to say?
I don't think there's anything to say.
Let's just move on to feedback then, shall we? Yeah. All right. So let me start. First of all, I'm going to say this.
Why don't you start today?
I'm going to start today. And what I want to say first is that last Sunday, Steph, because she's probably not going to mention it, she celebrated her birthday.
I did.
Happy birthday.
21 today, 21
21.
today.
Yeah, sure.
21,
We'll
yes.
take that.
Or maybe 22.
She
I don't
got
know.
the key of the door, never been 21 before.
Well, that's very kind of you, all of you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Musical
wish it was-
interlude brought to you by Nick. How was the birthday?
Yeah, the birthday was really good. I'm trying to think where to start for all this. So, I actually had an invitation from the local drop zone, the skydiving drop zone here, to gain some experience and ride along in the right seat on the Kodiak all weekend. So I did that all day on Saturday, and then Sunday, it ended up that my brother has actually come to town as well. So I was planning just to do that for half the day, and so we did, I think, 7 loads in the morning of skydivers, and then around 1 o'clock I called it quits, and we went out to brunch, which was really nice. And that's about the time they had to quit dropping skydivers too, because the storms showed up, which has been happening pretty much every day here and is happening again. It's pouring rain right outside my window. No thunder and lightning this time around, but that was happening earlier as well. But we had a very nice brunch. We did go to a restaurant nearby in town. We did outside seating. Everything was nice and spaced out, so we weren't too close to anyone. And we kind of just watched these thunderstorms build up all around while we were having brunch. And it was actually really, really pretty, really gorgeous day. Lots of good thunder and lightning in the distance, and kind of wrapped things up right as it started to encroach on us, and it would have been time to call it quits anyway. So that was the majority of the day on Sunday. And then I had a few things to do around the house and a little trip that I had to take on Sunday evening. So just a small
Really?
trip. Yeah.
Little
Had to go to Philadelphia.
Oh, why? Some family you had to go and meet?
Because she's sneaky.
I mean, yeah, I would call them family.
I'm not really sure exactly how to cover all this, but
I'll just go ahead.
Go ahead.
Tell us from your perspective, because I think it's more fun.
Well, from my perspective,
And then I'll fill in the details.
if you look at the APG calendar, you can see my schedule there, and I make that available for the public. Sometimes that's a mistake. And it appeared that my last trip on the Mad Dog was going to be this trip that departed on Monday and was supposed to go up to Philadelphia and back, and then over to Grand Rapids, and then 2 nights in Grand Rapids, and then back to Atlanta. But we know that, and I've been telling everybody about this for weeks, that we are not serving Grand Rapids from Atlanta anymore. So I knew I wasn't going to do that part of it. And I knew that I would most likely just go up to Philadelphia and back. And that was probably going to be it for me on the Mad Dog, the MD-88. And so, I don't know, a few days before, I think Mike Carrolls, our dispatcher Mike, host of the Flying and Life podcast, contacted me. I think he texted me or something like that. And he said, "Hey, Jeff, do you mind if I ride your jump seat to Philly and back on Monday?" And I said, "No, I don't mind at all. That'd be fun." And then I was kind of secretly thinking to myself, the last time that Mike rode my jump seat, it was not a good experience at all. Because
Why?
My first officer was Dana. And that wasn't why, though. That was part of
that would be the whole reason.
That was
why.
part of the the reason.
I have no questions.
Well, we ended up going into Columbus, Ohio, and my landing was being videotaped by one Jen Niffer, and I had a couple of witnesses in the cockpit with me at the time, not making it easy for me to concentrate on making a good landing. And it wasn't the best landing. It wasn't the worst, for sure. I've had a lot worse. So anyway,
My back still hasn't recovered, Jeff.
Yeah, see, there you go. So when Mike asked me if he could, and I'm thinking, okay, so it's likely going to be my first officer's last chance at a landing on this too. And I'm thinking, how I need to figure out how I'm going to do this. So Mike isn't in the jump seat when I'm doing my landing. But anyway, he ended up being in the jump seat when I did my last landing. So we went up to, and also like the night before, I believe, I got this email from Chattanooga Tim, one of our APG community members. And he said, "Hey, Jeff, I'm going to be," and he sends me this email and it has a picture, a screenshot of his boarding pass from Atlanta to Philly and Philly back to Atlanta, first class. And he said, "I'm going to not do anything. It's Memorial Day, and I'm just going to go right up with you, and I'll see you in Atlanta tomorrow." And I went, "Oh, that's kind of cool." So I knew that Chattanooga Tim was going to ride up with me, and I knew that Mike was going to be with us as well. And then I'm walking into the airport toward the gate, and I see Stephen Ivy sitting there in his uniform, looking really sharp, sporting a really sweet stash. And so we talked to him, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I'm gonna ride up with you to Philadelphia." And I went, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I need to go to Chicago eventually." And I thought, this is one of your last flights, so I'd like to ride one of your last flights on the Mad Dog. And I went, "Oh, okay." Turns out he didn't make it because they ran out of seats, because we're doing this lower capacity now to
remember that point.
Yes. So instead of 100 and what is it, Dana, 148, 149 total seats
it's like
available.
60% of that or something.
Yeah,
right?
it's like,
Basically.
I think a total of like 87 or something like that. Anyway, I think that's about it. Capacity 87. So yeah, he didn't make it. So we blasted off, headed up to Philadelphia. And again, I really am honestly not thinking anything else, but just getting the airplane. Oh, by the way, the first officer flew that leg up to Philly. And I'm glad he did, because I texted Mike, who was sitting in the back on the way up. I said, "Yeah, he's going to be doing the landing in Philly, and I'm going to do it on the way back to Atlanta." And that's when he was going to be in the jump seat. So I thought it was most appropriate to do it that way. Although I was thinking to myself, honestly, I'm going to do the one up to Philadelphia, and if I screw that one up, I'm going to take the one back to Atlanta too, just to try to get a good landing for my last line. Anyway, so we got up there, and I did not notice that there was some kind of commotion going on in the window arriving at the gate. Apparently there was, but I was so focused on trying to figure out what gate we were supposed to be going to, and then watching the guy bringing us in, because we were supposed to go to gate 12 and everybody was at gate 14. I'm going, what is going on here? And then I noticed, as the gate agent was bringing the jetway to the airplane, he's got his his smartphone out, and is like he's taking video as he's driving the jetway to the airplane. I'm thinking, what is he doing? And I'm thinking, well, maybe he's just like a guy that really loves the Mad Dog and knows that this is going to be one of the last flights from Atlanta, but I don't know. So again, it didn't really dawn on me that there was anything else going on. And then I finally figured out why it was that the gate agent was videotaping this, and walked out into the gatehouse area at Philadelphia, and I see a bunch of faces that I recognize, one of which is this one right here standing next to me in my Studio 1A. And I saw Tanya wearing a Save the Mad Dogs shirt. And of course, Chattanooga Tim was hanging out there, of course, because we just flown him in, and I knew he was going to be flying back. Mike was up there, obviously, because he flew up with us as well. And then I saw Hillel, and I went, oh, Hillel's here.
Nicely showered, by the way.
Yes, he was very
fresh
very
out of the shower.
Exactly. And then I noticed a couple of very brightly colored suits, costumes, and they were dinosaurs. How clever that is. Let me see. I should probably share the screen and share some of these photos with you guys. Let's see. Application window. Go to there and share. And then I'm going to have to do this. Sorry, guys. It's not easy. Crap. How do I do that? Where'd it go?
Did you lose your cursor?
No, I got my cursor. It's just I'm trying to get to.
If you've never stood here and watched this big screen, I don't know how he does this. I'm sitting here going,
well,
I don't know where everything is.
There you go. We could have put them in as an overlay, but look at this.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, Nick suggested that we do that, and I thought it would be easier for him not to have to worry about it. But now I kind of wish that I'd have to do that. Would have been a lot easier. Anyway, so this is me hugging the dinosaurs, and so who do you think is inside these dinosaur costumes? How about the pink one? Who would that be?
Fossils?
Well, it's definitely a girl dinosaur.
A girl dinosaur. It was Dr. Steph. She's inside that dinosaur costume. And Rob, Hamish, Dick, whatever you want to call him, he was in the yellow one. And apparently, I guess, Steph, he had contacted you and said he's going to get these costumes. And
he already had the costumes, but we
okay.
thought it would be an appropriate send-off for the Mad Dog.
So wait a minute.
They
Wait a
referred
minute.
to the
Are you
airplane
telling me
as the
that
dinosaurs.
Rob owns these?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. There's a whole story behind that, which
Yeah,
we'll get into
there's a story behind
here, which
that.
is very benign, actually, but I'll tell you later because it's actually very funny, but it's not aviation related, so we'll skip
Okay.
it. But
I noticed Rob's got double protection on. He's got a suit and a PPE.
I kept my face mask on too.
You both
I mean, we we don't think that dinosaurs are susceptible to coronavirus, but we weren't sure, so best to be prepared.
Zoom in a little bit. It's still hard to kind of see exactly who these people are, but you can see Rob more clearly that he has his mask on. And so at first it was a little bit difficult for me to tell exactly who these people were because they were wearing their masks. We did have a picture of the cake, but I don't see it. I'll make sure I put it in the show notes. Jeff's daughter made a beautiful cake, and I wanted
delicious cake. It was very good.
Well, yeah. So as I said, we'll make sure we put a picture of that in the show notes. Very nice. It had the Acme logo on it. And congratulations, Captain Jeff. I believe that's what it said, something like that. Yeah, awesome. And in the meantime, where all this is going on, did I forget anybody? We got
that was everyone that was there. There were a couple people who. So you mentioned Stephen had wanted to be there. Captain Craig also wanted to come up, but was unable to at the last moment from the Baltimore area.
And so
I wanted to be there, but I'm stuck in England.
Yeah, a lot of people did want to be there, but could not make travel arrangements. Fred tried to make travel arrangements.
So we basically, caused quite a commotion. Passengers were all kind of looking and figuring out what was
Hey,
going
if you ever want to attract a lot of attention to yourself at a gate waiting for an airplane, put on a dinosaur costume.
This is the way to do it.
This is the way to do it.
Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. So we had our cake. And then they said, "Oh, we're flying back with you." And almost everybody was able to not everybody, but a few of the people in attendance in Philadelphia said we're riding back with you to Atlanta. That would be Tanya and Dr. Steph, and of course Mike was up in the jump seat. Chattanooga Tim, we already knew that, and I think that's it, right?
That's it. Yeah.
I think Jeff was going to. He was going to try to do it, but he got bitten by the capacity issue.
I tried bribing the gate agent with a piece of cake, but a woman covered couples.
Oh, and she won.
And honestly, the same exact reason why I didn't even try to come up and fly that round trip with you, because it was just too close, actually. So I didn't want to take the chance.
Danny would still be in Philadelphia.
I would probably still be there.
Yeah. So we got back to Atlanta. We'd already planned. Mike had said, hey, after we get to Atlanta, do you want to do something like grab a bite to eat and have some beers and that kind of thing? I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So I knew we were kind of planning on doing that. So when by the way, Jeff, such a good friend. You know, if somebody who gives you the shirt off their back is really a true friend.
Literally.
He literally gave me, he was wearing this nice black Under Armour shirt and with a collar on it because, you know, so he could non-rev on the airplane back or perhaps even jump seat. But anyway, he didn't make it, but he did think to give the shirt to Steph, and she gave it to me when she got on the airplane. So I was able to wear that when we got back to Atlanta. Well, we got back to Atlanta, into the gate, and then we saw Dana and Julie also arriving in Atlanta. And so they were there to welcome all of us back from Philadelphia.
And nobody saved me a piece of cake.
We should have actually brought some cake back that would have been good.
Well, I would have if I'd known that Dana was going to be there, but I didn't. It was a big surprise.
And I was actually thinking the whole cake was coming with us because Jeff was supposed to be coming with us. And the cake would have come in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest of the cake was not already.
So we decided from that point to head over to Mellow Mushroom on Virginia Avenue, and I wore Jeff's shirt. So he was kind of there in spirit, sort of.
Yeah.
And we had some great pizza and beer, and I was able to, but when we left, well, I think Mike is going to talk about this. He sent us some feedback, and included in that feedback is something kind of special that he kind of arranged with the air traffic controllers up at the Philadelphia unit. So we'll play that in a minute. But what I'd like to do now is play something that we recorded at Mellow Mushroom. So this would be a good time for that, I think.
Didn't you record something in the airport?
Who?
Mike did.
Philly?
He did?
Mike did. Never mind.
Mike did, but I don't know where that went to.
Wait,
let's get it from Mike.
Oh, I don't remember. You want to play Mike's first then?
No, that's a different thing. So you can play.
Okay. All right. So why can't I find? Here it is. Evernote. Dang it. Okay. Back to that and over here to this. Okay, I'm here at the Mellow Mushroom. Thank you. That's Chattanooga Tim.
Hello, Jeff. How are you doing today? I've decided to take a drive down to Atlanta and fly to Philadelphia with you today. And I got to admit that Jeff did grease the landing on the way back.
I wouldn't necessarily say grease, but thank you very much. It wasn't as bad as the last time that this certain person was on my jump seat in Columbus, Ohio, and certain first officer was sitting in the right seat. And let me just say that there was a lot less activity in the cockpit on this particular landing than the one in Columbus, Ohio. A lot fewer distractions. So that's one thing that helped. Anyway, we're here at Mellow Mushroom on Virginia Avenue, not too far at all from the Atlanta International Airport in College Park. And so as Tim just mentioned, he drove down from Chattanooga, flew from Atlanta to Philly and back. And that was my last, at the time at least, scheduled activity on the Mad Dog. And so let me tell you what happened here. Mike, about a week ago or so, he says, hey, I'm thinking about jump seating on your flight up to Philly and back. And I went, oh, that's cool. And then like yesterday, Sunday morning, I get this email from Tim, And he goes, yeah, hey, look what I have here. And he sends me this screenshot of his boarding pass going from Atlanta to Philly and back. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. So I'm thinking that's cool. It's kind of interesting to have some people kind of share that moment with me on the last Mad Dog. And I really honestly didn't think anything else was going to happen, but I was wrong. I'm wrong a lot, actually. Less than 50% most of the time in my life. So ended up seeing Stephen Ivy at the airport, and he was going to go with us from Atlanta to Philly, and then he was going to go to Chicago out of there because he had a trip or something going on in Chicago. Unfortunately, he did not make the flight because we have restricted the number of people that can travel on the airplanes. And the good news is that these airplanes are getting more and more packed lately. So that's a good sign. So anyway, the bad thing is that Stephen couldn't go with us. So headed up to Philly. And when I got to Philly, I didn't even notice this, but they tell me after the fact that there were several people in the window at the arrival gate, like jumping up and down and waving and everything else. And I did not see any of it because I was not really looking for that, because I didn't think that was going to happen. And the only thing that was kind of odd is that the jetway driver, when he was driving the jetway up in Philadelphia, he had his phone and he was like recording it and like pulling it up to and I go, what is he doing? I've never seen a jetway operator, a gate agent, with his phone. Like, I think, well, maybe he's like a real Mad Dog freak or something. Like, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was bitten in the past for like slamming the jetway into the airplane. He wants to make sure he has photographic evidence or video evidence. I don't know. So I didn't think much of that. And then finally, all the passengers got off. We went up to the gatehouse, and there were a whole bunch of people that I know, including two who were in these crazy outfits. They were dinosaur outfits. That's so funny. Really, dinosaur outfits. One was Dr. Steph, and one was Rob, Hamish, Fairbairn, Robert, Dick, I like to call him. And then I saw, let's see, it was Hillel was there, and this young lady sitting next to me, Tanya, was there, and Jeff Falmouth was there, and surprisingly, Fred wasn't there. Fred's always there. I don't know what.
Fred's wife wouldn't let him come.
Oh, I don't blame her.
And Fred couldn't make the flight work to go back to California.
That's okay. Fred was here in spirit. But I am disappointed, Fred. I'm really disappointed. And let's see, who have I missed here? We had so Jeff and Hillel and Rob and Steph and Tanya and Mike, of course, and Tim. They came up with me. So, okay. So, and then they said, and they had this cake, this beautiful cake that I think Jeff's daughter made, which is, was wonderful, beautiful cake. And that was awesome. And then everybody in the gatehouse is going like, what's going on here? This is weird. And then our flight attendants ended up getting some cake too, because we had to get off the airplane now because they do the whole fogging, cleaning routine. And so they got to partake in some of the festivities. And then Jeff goes, oh, it's not over yet. We're going back with you to Atlanta. I went, what? So Jeff had planned to go back with us. Unfortunately, he didn't make it because we just ran out of seats. Because of we're blocking out a certain number of seats. So our capacity on the airplane has decreased. So sorry, Jeff, I wish you could have gone with me, but I'm wearing Jeff's shirt. He gave me the shirt off his back. That's a friend, because I have to wear this shirt because I'm disguised at the Mellow Mushroom on Virginia Avenue. Let's bring it all back around. So you're wondering to yourself, where is Jeff going with all this? Jeff says, no idea. Let's see. So who rode back with me? Tanya, who's sitting right here, and she's going to talk to you in a minute. Obviously Mike and Tim, because they got to get back home because their car's here in Atlanta. Just makes sense. Steph was able to come back with us as well. Unfortunately, she has to work tomorrow. She has a job, so she has to get back, and she had to fly back at 6 o'clock, I think. So she's probably home now, or at least back in Charlotte. So anyway, so most of us were able to come back over here to the Mellow Mushroom, and now finally, I know you're going. Like, would you shut up, Jeff? Oh, well, you're going to talk in a minute. When we got to, I'm sorry, thank you. So when we got back to Atlanta, Dana is giving me all these nonverbal cues, and I thought maybe at first he was having a stroke, but then now I realize he's saying, like, well, who am I? Minced meat? Or, is that the thing you say? Chopped liver. That's it. Minced meat. Wow. Chopped liver. Anyway, so when we came back to Atlanta, and we got to the gate, and then we went out to the gatehouse, and then joining the party is Julie and your husband. I can't remember his name. Oh, that's right, Dana. Julie's better half was there, or yeah, we're there. Oh, did I? What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, Dana's better half, Julie. Yeah, that's what I really meant. Thank you. So they were there, and they joined the festivities, and now we're here. And now I'm going to finally shut up, and I'm going. So I'm thinking of that sound effect in my. Shut up, Jeff. All right, here we go. Here is Tanya. I'm sorry, we ran out of time.
Hi, APGers. It's just so wonderful to have been able to do this, to fly on Jeff's possibly final Mad Dog flight. I love the aircraft. The takeoff, like when it lifts off the ground and you feel like that support under you, and no other aircraft does that. And then how smooth it is in the air, and it might be a little noisy in the back, but you know what? It's worth it. But it was just so great to see everyone that we were able to. I mean, obviously, I've been in lockdown for 2.5 months, and this is a little nutty. I mean, this was all the insane people that came out, to be honest. But it was just delightful, and to finally be able to have Captain Jeff as my pilot was. Oh yes, and this was the first time I ever flew first class too.
How are all those drinks?
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that.
Here's your bottle of water. And
Yeah.
Shut up.
Exactly. So, no, that's. If you heard what Jeff said, he said, "Here's your bottle of water and Cheez-Its, shut up, slave." But that's a joke. That's an in-joke for another podcast that we listen to, which is the No Agenda podcast. But anyway, it was a wonderful experience. I'm so glad to be here now with Dan, and to meet Julie for the first time, and Mike, and to meet Tim for the first time, and to be here with Jeff. And we really wish that all of you could be here with us right now.
So Jeff told you the story. This is Dispatcher Mike, by the way. So Jeff told you the story of how this happened for him. Well, this has been a thought that has gone between Dr. Steph and I for about 3 or 4 weeks about what our Memorial Day plans were and what we were going to do. And even I was talking with Dana about it for about 3 or 4 weeks, setting this whole thing up. And, you know, it was truly... So today was also my last flight on a Mad Dog, and I've been working and dispatching and dealing with the DC-9s my entire aviation career. Once I got to a major airline, between the DC-9 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and now the 88s and 90s. Obviously, the 717s are still around, but those are just, they're not the same. They're new. But really, so I did a last flight in the cabin, and I had the absolute great pleasure of doing the last flight in the flight deck with Captain Jeff at the helm, and just watching the way that he handles the aircraft, in the command he has of the aircraft, and how smooth he is with the airplane. Really the 18 days and 2 hours of experience that he has on the aircraft. Oh, that's 18 years, 12,400 hours pretty much on the aircraft. It was really, truly fun. It was great surprising him. I had nuggets of surprises pretty much throughout the day. I think the biggest one was when we were taxiing out and I was in the jump seat and Philadelphia ground goes, "Is Captain Jeff on board?" And Jeff looks around like, "Yeah." And he goes, write down a phone number. Yeah. But he goes, "Well, you have some friends on social media, and apparently we know that this is your last flight as an MD-88 captain, and after 18 years and 12,000 plus hours, we'd like to congratulate you on that, and good luck in your next aircraft in future." And I swear to God, Jeff's jaw hit the yoke. It was just crazy. He goes, "I wonder who did that." I'm like, "Well, you're welcome." And I kind of explained to him how I was able to get that out. But it was a lot of fun. It was an enjoyment, and setting this up and having a meetup again is really nice and really, really good. So I'm gonna pass on over to Dana, who unfortunately I would just like to say we didn't get to celebrate your last 88 flight in the same way. And man, that's a kick in the nuts, and I'm sorry.
No one knows.
I'm grabbing the mic. We didn't know when Dana didn't know what his last flight was going to be, and sadly, it looks like he already had it. And I just wanted to quickly comment before Dana talks about Mike's surprise nuggets, and I just have to say that Mike's nuggets are just awesome. So, hang on, let me give it to Dana.
You know, it's an absolute pleasure being a part of this entire community, number one, and it wouldn't be this community without all the people that are involved with it. So it's amazing to see the support for Captain Jeff and for all of us on the show for that matter. I left the lake today only for this one reason, to come up here. Julie and I decided on Memorial Day here, and it would and pizza and beer, and didn't want to have anything to do with Jeff, but no, we wanted to come up here and surprise him as well and be here for him. And this is a very special moment in his career. So we decided to leave the lake after being up there for the weekend, and it was a beautiful weekend, and I was really looking forward to coming over here. The other thing is I appreciate the accolades. It's been an unbelievable ride for me as well. I had the unique opportunity to fly several trips with Jeff over his career, and a lot of, as you've heard me say this before, a lot of what I've learned and how to be the captain that I am comes from guys like Jeff as he's sticking his finger in his mouth. And I was sitting here, I was thinking, okay, Jeff has 12,400 hours roughly. I mean, almost exactly half. I'm at 6,700 hours. So it's, if I do the math on that, a little more than half of the total time. So I've got quite a few hours, but not nearly as many quality hours as Jeff does. But then again, Jeff is a lot older than me. Get out of my way. Retire. Leave. Why do you think I came to see you? Goodbye. No, I'm really only kidding. I don't know. I don't trip on the curb as you go out. It's a little slip out there. It's like slippery out there. It's raining. So anyways, I don't have much more to say other than the fact that I know Julie's not going to say much. I'm glad that she joined me. She was actually very adamant. I was thinking about trying to hop on the flight, but because of what we're talking about, the flights were just too close that I decided it just wasn't worth it. Yeah, I'd be stuck in Philly, and especially my wife, and she has to work tomorrow too, so it wasn't worth the risk. So we took the second best option, and we came here to visit with everybody. On that note, it's a 3-hour show, and I think we've elapsed our 3 hours at this point. So I'm going to send it back to you, Jeff, in the studio. No, I'm looking. He's sitting right here. Here you go.
Yes, and I have to say, Dana gave me a wonderful gift. It's a patch that has the Mad Dog picture on it, and it says 10,000 hours. And so not a lot of us get a chance to wear that patch. And so thank you very much, Dana. Very, very special. Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. And I have to say, this is the third airplane that I've flown at Delta. Dana, I think this is much more significant for Dana because this is the only airplane that you've flown. So this is the first airplane that you've had to say goodbye to. And, well, no, yeah, others. Oh, okay. Your former airline. Yeah. And as people know with me, I'm kind of the grim reaper of airplanes. If I end up flying an airplane, that means that the airplane's going to be retired. I think every airplane that I've flown, except for the T-38. Yeah. So, honestly, I was really not happy about the fact that I got displaced off the 727 and had to go to the MD-88 because I had heard so many terrible, awful things about the airplane. And, honestly, right away, I kind of felt the same way because it just didn't feel like the airplane I was used to flying, like the 727. And then after time went by, I realized that I kind of understood some of the idiosyncrasies of the airplane. And then I started appreciating some of the fly-by-wire, fly-by-cable characteristics of actually feeling the airplane. It's almost like a living thing. I mean, more so than any other airplane we fly in the airline industry. This is actually, you feel everything that's happening with the controls when you're hand flying the airplane. It's a wonderful airplane. It really is. I've come to find that, people say, I think I've heard people say, I love the MD-88 because Jeff loves the MD-88. And I'm thinking, I always didn't love the Mad Dog. I really didn't. And you always have, because that's all you've really known, really, for the big airliners. Yeah. Dana was an instructor on it, so a lot of his career has been involved with this particular airplane. And I have to say that I finally started appreciating the airplane for what it is, and I'm really going to miss it. It's a really nice airplane, and for an airplane that I was never supposed to fly, and having flown on it longer than anything else I've flown, as they've mentioned several times, 18 years, 12,000, almost 12,400 hours, more than any other airplane I've flown in my life. I think I have over like 20,400 hours total time civilian, and then a couple thousand hours of Air Force time. But I've come to really love. It's an interesting word to use for the Mad Dog, but I really love this airplane, and I'm going to miss it. So anyway, thank you everyone for coming out and making this such a special day for me. I honestly did not expect any of this. I really didn't think it was a big deal. It's just like another airplane. I'll move on to another one. But everybody made me realize how special it really is. So thank you. Cheers to everyone.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on episode 427. We've used up all the time with my audio from Hollow Mushroom.
Hey, I just want to jump on the end of that there because those were some really wonderful sentiments. And oh man, Dana's on the phone. Dana, ruining my moment here.
She's saying something nice.
I really need Dana to listen to this.
Of course, I got a phone call just at the wrong time. So hold on one second.
Okay, so hold that thought for a moment.
Okay,
we're just going to pause.
Okay,
pause.
Studio, pause the show.
If you have something that you would like to raise a glass to.
Delay the shower.
Hold off on the shower. I wish I had some.
His timing is impeccable.
Yeah.
Another one? I'll get it. You sure?
I'm sorry. They're
right, no, that's okay.
calling for my
I'm just gonna
termite
pretend like that
inspection.
didn't have. Yeah, good. Termites. We don't want termites, so that's super important. So just jumping on the end of those sentiments there, because some really lovely things were said there for the aircraft that's being retired and the two wonderful pilots that we know who have flown that aircraft for such a long time. So I just want to do a small toast to you guys both, Jeff and Dana, and to the lovely aircraft, the MD-88. So there you go.
Cheers.
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 Cheers. I have nothing to drink.
Well, actually, I don't have anything left in my sparkling water, but Jeff is getting another round.
I'm glad we were able to make it a reasonably big deal for you guys, because that's a long time to be on
it's a lifetime
the same
of an
aircraft.
airplane, so it's a huge deal.
And as also we said that, like Dana, I was telling Jeff when we were listening to this recording, I really feel bad for Dana because he really didn't know when. I mean, he did fly his last flight.
If we had known, we would have made a big deal of that flight for you as well, Dana. We just
I know.
I'm just no idea.
Honestly, I am the luckiest unlucky pilot, if that can make sense.
Or the unluckiest lucky pilot.
Unluckiest lucky pilot. That's correct.
Oh,
well, but I'm not going to get into what I really mean by that. But yes, it was special for me to be there. I've spent a lot of time with Jeff. And by the way, the patch symbolizes that you're greater than 10,000 hours.
Okay. And you just hit that milestone.
Yeah, I didn't have it made specifically for you, but it is something that I've had for a long time. Hoping that I would get to that point. I'm obviously never going to get there, so I couldn't think of a better person to have it.
Oh, thank you very much, Dana. That really means a lot to me.
So,
cheers.
Yeah, it's sad. And I believe me, this week I've been putting in slips to fly all week, and I have not got a thing. So, unless the opportunity arises to bring one of them to the boneyard, which I don't think will happen for me. Yes, my last trip occurred on I think it was April 26th or 27th, and the last flight I flew was Raleigh-Durham to Atlanta on ship 971. So.
And many people said that captain flying that jet that day was one of the best in
at least my landing. I didn't know it was going to be my last landing, but at least I know that now that was my last landing, and it was. I'm not bragging on myself, but it was actually a really good one. So
yeah, sometimes it's better to not know.
You don't put all that pressure on yourself.
I didn't put all that pressure on myself, but yeah. That's all. I mean, it was just a great pleasure to be there with you, Jeff, and to celebrate with you. So that's all I can say.
Thank you. I'm glad that you were able to be there as well, Dana. Thank you, and thanks,
Julie too. Julie, God love her. It was she wanted to be there as well, so she really pushed to go. So
we all love Julie too.
Oh yeah, I'm lucky.
We had a great time at the Mellow Mushroom.
I did. We all did.
People were saying, did you how many beers was Jeff drinking? I think at that point I only had two.
Only two.
Two total.
We all only had two.
Yeah. So I was just high on excitement in life, being with my friends. Anyway, Mike, who you heard laughing several times in that, I love Mike's laugh. It's just every time I hear him laugh, I want to laugh. And he prepared his own feedback for us, and a little bit of it is going to duplicate what we've already heard. Of course, I duplicated pretty much everything in my audio. Fix it in post. But Mike did send in this, including the little interaction with air traffic control. So here we go. Take it away, Mike Carrolls.
Hello, Captain Jeff and the rest of the amazing APG crew, and more importantly, the great APG community. It's Dispatcher Mike. I just had a couple more thoughts to add on about the surprise we gave Captain Jeff last Monday, and really just my time with the MD 8890 as an aircraft type and everything like that. So I've been with Acme for 14 years now, and in the dispatching world, in the airline industry, for going on my 15th year. And I've always operated and dispatched T-tail airplanes, basically from the CRJ all the way through the DC-9-30, 40, 50, and then when we merged with Acme, the MD-88, MD-90 got added to that list of DC-9 variants that we operated. I understand that we're still going to have the 717 around for a while, but to me, the 717 is different. The 717 is new. It's a newer airframe. It's a new airplane. It's a lot more modern avionics. The jump seat on the 717, in my opinion, sucks. It's not as good as the 88s and the 90s and the 9s, where those are. Everyone always complained about those jump seats, but to me, I always enjoyed the Mad Dog jump seat the most. I'm going to miss the versatility of the airplane. I'm going to miss just really just the great utility short haul aircraft that it was and all that. Jeff, I again want to thank you for allowing me to ride your jump seat on that flight back down from Philly. I was very happy that we got to surprise you. And even you didn't know really anything was going on. You just thought I was going to go on a jump seat ride with you. But I think you'd have to figure out by now we have to do something. I mean, geez. So I'd like to thank my cohort, Dr. Steph and Captain Jeff Felmuth, for kind of really starting the thought process of what we were going to do and what our really Memorial Day plans were going to be about. But it was surprising. You, Jeff, was probably one of the best gifts that I could have given you. And it was a great joy for me to do it because it was a lot of fun for even just to sit there. Over the years of flying with you, watching you fly or you flying my airplane with me, you've always taught me the ability and the power to be in command and to know the right decisions to make and to make a decision and stick with it. And all of that while flying the aircraft incredibly smooth and always monitoring and looking at everything. The last jump seat, this last flight on Monday, it just made me smile so much to see you trim out the airplane and then kind of sit back and cross your arms. And even though we might have been in a bank or all that, you had the aircraft perfectly trimmed out and perfectly stable that you felt comfortable enough that you wanted to take your hands off the yoke to make sure that you had everything trimmed out the right way, the way it needed to be. And on the downwind, when we avoided the weather on the downwind into Atlanta, you switched everything off and you flew the airplane like a boss. Like I hope it was just amazing. I hope your first officer was he was thinking the same thing, because you really took that and took the situation that you were given and really gave a great outcome for the passengers. So I told Liz I'd keep this under 5 minutes, and sorry, Liz, I lied. So my biggest, absolute best surprise that I got for you on Monday, Jeff, was getting ATC involved. And so this is a little clip for those who could not hear it live because you weren't in the flight deck or you didn't know exactly what frequency the flight was on. So my hat's off to Philadelphia and their controllers. And so let's go ahead and play this.
Ground 1895, we got the weather and we're at spot 8, red taxi.
1895, Philly ground, runway 9 left, taxi via November Kilo.
November Kilo to 9 left, 1895.
You guys got Captain Jeff on board?
He is.
All right, well, Captain Jeff, you got some friends on social media that like you a lot, and just want to wish you congratulations on 12 years with the Mad Dog, and good luck with whatever you got next.
Wow, thank you very much, appreciate that.
1895, hope it's a good one back. You can monitor tower 118.5.
18.5, y'all have a good day. Good day.
1895, Philly Tower, you ready to go?
We're ready. 1895.
1895, the wind 100 at Niner. On departure, fly heading 080, runway 9 left, clear for takeoff.
On departure, fly heading as 080, 1895.
1895, contact departure. Congratulations again, Jeff.
All right, we'll go to departure 1895. You have a good day. Thanks, guys. Departure 1895 with you 1200 for 5,080.
1895 Philly departure radar contact climbing T10 10,000.
Up to 10 10,000, 1895.
1895 turn left direct Stowen.
Left turn direct Stowen, 1895.
1895, we heard this might be your last flight on the MD-80 there?
That is affirmative.
Do you want it to be shorter or longer? We can work that out for you.
Shorter the better, 1895.
1895, proceed direct to Westminster.
Direct Westminster, 1895, thank you.
1895, contact New York Center 13347 and enjoy your flight, Captain Jeff.
3347. We'll see you at 1895.
Well, there you have it. I'd like to thank Daniel and Adrian from Philadelphia Tower and Tracon for those shout outs. And I tell you, folks, Jeff's mouth and jaw almost hit the yoke when he first listened to that. It was such a thrill doing it again. Thank you, Jeff, for everything you do, the community, and for being a friend. So from down in Sharpsburg, coming off my Mad Dog high, it's Dispatcher Mike.
Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for everybody that had a hand in planning this whole thing. Like this guy standing next to me. I'll have to fix that in a minute. Standing next to me, Steph, a big part of the planning and all that kind of stuff. And of course, Mike as well, and anybody that had anything to do with it. Thank you so much. It really meant a lot to me. This podcast and this community is just overwhelming to me, and I feel like you're all my family. So thank you.
Yeah, happy to give back.
Jeff.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, congratulations, Jeff. That's amazing.
Thank you, Rick. Okay. Should we skip the correction and just go into the coffee fund and then go into the because we have this in the intro.
I don't have the intro, so I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's just quickly, because here at the APG we're all about accuracy. 100%.
No.
50% accuracy is what we
better
strive.
than 49.
Better. Somewhere in the bottom half there is what we're shooting for. And we pretty much nail it.
50%? Yeah.
50% of that time we're right every time.
That's right.
So apparently David is concerned for our accuracy and the fact that we don't have any fact checkers anymore. So that's what the community is for, fact checkers. And he says, "This is David from Leeds in West Yorkshire, England, and have just been listening to APG 426. I was surprised to hear that Captain Nick, being half Aussie and his dad being an Aussie, didn't know what ANZAC stood for."
Well, I got it half right. So
you did. I know. That's
what more can you expect?
I don't know. It would be foolish to expect anything else.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said that Captain Nick said it stood for Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. It actually stands for Australia, New Zealand Army Corps. The Canadians were never part of the Anzacs, but did fight alongside them during the Great War, commonly known as World War I. That's probably what Nick was thinking of, I'd say.
Yeah, I to be fair, very few people actually refer to it in its full term. And I must have picked that up years ago because I've always thought that was the correct.
Sounds reasonable to me.
That's what I didn't know that he was wrong.
When Nick's,
I didn't know you were wrong.
Well, there are an awful lot of Australians out there who would have been turning in their graves. So I'm going to send a general apology out to both Canada, because it's nothing to do with you. So go away. And state of the Antipodeans. Cheers, mates, and my apologies for mixing Canada in with your Army Corps. I'm very sorry.
Well, he was very upset. You could just tell, from the words, they were just dripping with disappointment.
Those acronyms, they'll get you every time.
They will. And I was in the Air Force, so what do I know about the Army Corps?
I don't know.
No, there you go. Yeah, my apologies. I should have got that right.
I don't think anybody really was that upset about it, but again, we really
at least one person.
Hey, you should have seen my Twitter feed from Australia.
Ouch! Sorry.
Ouch, yes.
At least you admitted you knew the words to Waltzing Matilda.
Whoops. Sorry.
Yeah, I do. I know two songs to sing it, two tunes to sing it to as well.
Oh,
there you go.
Really?
I don't know.
We're probably we only know the famous one, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do them tonight. Don't worry.
Oh,
thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see. And with that, let's just quickly knock out the coffee fund.
Oh, can I just have a quick couple of thank yous?
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. I got so absorbed in the whole.
I was trying to interrupt.
All about, it's all about me and Steph. It's about all of us. So go ahead, please.
I won't be long. It's just that I've received a couple of very nice handwritten letters of condolence, and I particularly wanted to, well, I've received a few, particularly wanted to mention Micah, our main man Micah, who composed a lovely letter, and also, of course, our darling producer Liz. So thank you very much indeed. And one final thing is to thank Marcus, the man from Omega Tau, who sent me a copy of his new fabulous book, which is called Once You Start Asking: Insight, Stories and Experiences from 10 years of reporting on science and engineering by Marcus Volta. And it's quite a weighty tome, and I'm really looking forward to dipping into it, although there are way too many graphs in there and mathematical formulas for the likes of me.
Well, now I'm nervous because he sent me a copy as well, which I've not received yet, but I will say thank you in advance as well.
I mean, I've just opened a page at random there.
No.
And, that's right. It's way too hard.
That for
Yeah,
that is
but I'm looking
intimidating.
forward to reading some of the easy bits. Thank you
Just
very
pictures
much. Marcus.
Yeah, exactly. I look at the pictures.
And of course, you can
okay.
you can buy that book now. I guess it's on Amazon. He hasn't said exactly
It is.
where.
It's on Amazon. You can find it
There
there.
you go. So all go out and buy it, please.
Yes, Marcus, the host of the Omega Tau podcast. All right, and that's how many of us were introduced to that man that was just yeah. It was just talking, Captain Nick. He did a whole episode on Captain Nick's adventures flying the RAF F4s and intercepting the Bear bombers. Right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to Rick. What you been up to, man?
Oh, really not a lot. I mean, compared to your illustrious last week here and last flight with the Mad Dog, what the heck could I say?
You didn't have surprises and stuff?
Just no. Just sat reserve in Cincinnati for a day or two. Did a flight down to Miami and back, and then I flew up to Denver and back. But other than that, not much. Going to Portland tomorrow morning, early in the morning. I'll be sitting there for a day or two, and then lines came out for the next bid period here, and looks like the flying is going to be heavy on the first 2 weeks, and then last 2 weeks off, hopefully. So, but I tell you, I mean, going back to your yours and Dana's last flight on the MD-80, it's just such an illustrious career. So so amazing to have and to gather that amount of experience in a single jet, and really get to that mastery level. That's something that I very much look up to, and I congratulate you. Tip of the hat to you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Cheers.
Appreciate that. Cheers.
Cheers.
And here's to Dana as well.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Dana,
Yes.
my man, what have you been up to besides just cruising the waters on that yacht?
Yeah, the weekend was amazing. I get up there and I forget about everything. So, especially what's going on in the business right now. Yeah, I get up there and just relax and enjoy some R&R. It's really become my nexus of relaxation. So, especially with this week, this week's been a particularly tough one, especially waiting for the results to come out. So, let's find out what my future holds, which they're still not out yet. And that's about it. Really nothing else to report. And that was, truly awesome to be there on Monday.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you for joining us, because you're such a big part of this and also such a big part of my experience on the Mad Dog.
Yeah, it's a brotherhood. There's no question about it. I'm really going to miss it. And truly, I know there are Mad Dog lovers out there, but very few understand like we do how much of a great airplane that she really is. And I'm desperately going to miss it.
Yeah. But we're not going to miss the coal.
No, there will be some advantages. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Fewer showers.
Are actually pale blue.
Oh, they're white. Anyway,
So, we have other things to talk about today. So let's move on.
Well, yeah, as Dana mentioned, the displacement bid closed earlier this week on Monday, actually, and the big computers are crunching away trying to decide where everybody will fall as far as what their new fleet might be or whatever their position might be, what their new base might be. So, a lot of downward movement right now at Acme, and so anyway, we'll let you know what the result is. Hopefully, by the time we do the show next week, we'll know where we're going to be going. I think I have a better idea than Dana has because there's more uncertainty with his seniority than mine. So,
most lucky, unlucky pilot.
There you go.
Well, the rest of us are looking forward to seeing what's in store for the future. So,
yeah, man, absolutely.
Positive thoughts all around.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good, man. Keep that chin up.
One door closes and another opens.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get to learn a new airplane as a first officer.
Speaking of new
Which one
airplanes,
it is.
Maybe you'll learn the 737. This guy standing next to me here, my very, very good friend Jeff. Probably wondering why he's in Studio 1A at APG headquarters. Well, if you're not, I am. I have no idea why.
How did this guy get here?
Shut up. Well, actually, honestly, now we mentioned the Monday and what I thought was going to be possibly my last actual flight on the Mad Dog, but it turns out that I ended up getting another trip, just a deadhead up yesterday to Pittsburgh, and then back this morning from Pittsburgh to Atlanta. And I didn't want to make a big deal of it because everybody made such a big deal of the thing on Monday. So I didn't really want to say much about this. I just wanted to kind of do the thing and then just go home and not say anything else. And when I was actually yesterday Jeff and I were talking, and I said, I told him where I was, and Jeff lives in the other part of Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia. And I kind of joked around. I said, well, hey, it's not that far. And I said, I have your shirt if you want to come and get it. And he goes, yeah, right. It's like a 5.5 or 5-6 hour drive or whatever it is from, and, we're just joking around, and that was it. I didn't think anything else of it. And then this morning when I was showing up at the gate, I almost didn't really see you. I think you had to kind of yell at me, and I'm walking by and this guy goes, Jeff. And it was Jeff at the Pittsburgh airport. He did actually drive from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh to fly with me because he didn't make it on that last flight on Monday. So he was able to ride the jump seat even with us from Pitt to Atlanta today. And honestly, for those of you who were with me on Monday flying from Philadelphia to Atlanta, that was actually really my last landing on the MD-88 because today the airplane landed itself. It was an auto land because of the visibility and ceiling here in Atlanta today. It was so close that I didn't want to chance having to do a miss and come back around. So we went ahead and set up for an auto land, Category 3 auto land. And I think it was a good decision to make because I'm not sure we would have been able to break out on a Cat 1. It would have been close. But anyway, the airplane did a pretty decent job of landing, auto land. And so technically my last landing was on Monday.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks for coming out.
So Jeff is, we're chatting on yesterday, and as he's chatting to me, I've got my phone open trying to see how am I going to get to Pittsburgh tonight. And I'm looking and I go, there's a flight at 6 out of Philly to Pittsburgh, but it's like 4:45. I can't get there and make that flight. I'm going, that's when I said, well, it's a 5.5 hour drive. He goes, well, you can do that. So we're done. And I start joking with my wife about it. And she goes, well, go. I go, you know what? You're right. So I quick packed a bag, jumped in the car, got some gas, and got on the road. Got to the hotel about 11 o'clock last night. And of course, the pilots will understand this. I go to KCM, which is known crew member, how crew members get through security, and I get to be selected for TSA screening.
Of course. Of course.
Every time.
Well, good news, I had planned for it. So I was ready for that. It was like a 20-minute line. So I go in, I get some coffee, and I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and I'm not in the gate area. I'm actually in the hallway in a chair And Jeff's just, I see the FO come by and I'm waiting and looking for Jeff and he's not coming. It's like 20 minutes later. He finally comes by with his breakfast in the styrofoam box and he's just walking by me. He doesn't even,
like a boss. Just like, I'll get there when I get there with my breakfast.
So,
can't go anywhere without me.
So where's my shirt? Yeah. He's looking at me with his sun face. He goes, "You didn't really drive." Oh yeah. And then it was a question, oh, am I going to get on the flight again? I go, don't you leave me again. So, I got on the flight. I sat up in the jump seat, and I must say it was a joy sitting up there just to watch. I've known Jeff for 11 years now, since the first podcast. And it was fun to watch the professionalism go on in that cockpit. It was really a thrill between him and James, the FO. Great job. They made a great decision to make the auto land. It's funny. I've only ever done one auto land at my airline where the airplane landed, and that was when I was a co-pilot. So to do it in somebody else's jump seat was kind of bizarre. But I'm looking over Jeff's shoulder watching the radar altimeter. And for Cat 1, you have to see the runway by 200 feet. Well, at 200 feet, Jeff is just calling lights, which means he sees the approach lights. So I don't know if we'd have broken out for a full landing. So they made a good call. And it was not a bad landing for an auto land. So just been hanging out, got my shirt. And I'll be going back. Jeff's going to take me back to the airport tonight. And I'm going to go stay with my son. So if I had been stuck in Pittsburgh, not a big deal. My son lives about 20 miles away.
Oh, perfect.
Which, if those you remember, that's where I was for the Pittsburgh party.
So close yet so far. Yeah. And for those who don't know, who might not have been listening back then, or even back to our 200th episode a little while ago, Colonel Jeff Felmuth is like the #1 OG original listener to Captain Jeff's podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
All the way back from like on the day episode 1 of Catholic Pilot came out. Jeff Felmuth listened to it.
#2.
Yep.
Don't take that the wrong way.
I hate doing that.
Can I say that?
Waiting for #2. Anyway, but if you got a good podcast to listen to, it's all right. The waiting for #2 part. So anyway, it's Jeff, I feel like I've known you my entire life, but it's only been 11 years, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, so thanks for, I said, no, as long as you're here, let's do the podcast together. I'll get you back to the airport after we finish, if we finish anytime soon. Okay. So now, I'm looking at everybody on the crew. I'm just making sure that we got everybody.
Did Nick talk about anything that he did? He did? Okay. I forgot.
You want to say anything else, Nick?
No, he's good.
No,
okay.
I'm good.
Okay, here we go then. Let's do a quick coffee fund. Nothing's quick in this show.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
One sec. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Yeah. All right, the coffee fund. That's what we sing because we like singing. And it's what we sing when we do the coffee fund, acknowledging the folks that are financial supporters of the show. And since the last episode, we have, a couple different ways to do this. We have the Coffee Fund Classic method. And since the last episode, we have had Norris Ogg and Brent Howell contribute. And the other way to do it is become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And we have a couple of new producers, Bruce Baker and Brandon Berrico. What do you need me to do?
No, never mind.
Right here. Okay. Oh, nope.
No, keep going.
He's trying to type stuff while I'm talking here. And it's not working out. We're not coordinating well here.
No, my bad.
Here we go. Now you can. And we have a new executive producer, who is Zebulon Dawson. So thank you very much, new executive producer, new producers, Bruce, Brandon, and Zebulon. If you want to join these folks, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. We will too.
Captain, Incoming message.
Now, this is the feedback portion of the show, but because we have spent so much time talking about all the shenanigans and surprises and celebrations and all that kind of stuff, we are really kind of at that place where we normally do the plain tale, and I think that's what we're going to do. So, command decision, we're going to make that plain tale up front right now. So sit back and relax and enjoy the third installment of the Ian Palmer interviews.
The Old Pilots Playing Tales. The Ian Palmer Interviews, Part 3. Ian, thanks very much indeed for joining me yet again.
Oh, it's great. Great to be back.
It's a great story, and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's great to be back, and it's great to be talking about aeroplanes.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we left last part of the story with you getting a job with a great airline, with Monarch, and you realized after a while, though, that you still had a drinking problem. And I think you acknowledged now that definitely needed fixing. How did you accomplish that?
Okay, so I was flying a lot. We were doing a lot of these flights where we would fly late in the evening and to the Greek islands, arriving back at sort of 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, doing these charter flights. And I remember on the days off, never ever, I will reiterate actually, never ever in the aeroplane was I under the influence. But on my days off, I couldn't wait to get home to drink. So I'd get home and I would be fairly out of it. And so I clearly knew in very short order that something wasn't quite right. I had a few relationships around that time. Nobody would stick with me, of course. Why would they? Everybody ran a mile. I started losing friends. And around this time, my parents, well, firstly, my father was diagnosed with, but he had fairly type 1 diabetes, so he was quite sick with that. My mother then was diagnosed with ovarian cancer that had spread to the bowel, lung, and stomach, so that was stage 4 cancer straight away. And my father then, very quickly afterwards, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I remember seeing my father on the Sunday night in hospital when we were told that he may not survive the rest of the week. And we were by his bedside on that Thursday evening, and he died on the Thursday. And again, I didn't feel anything. I had no emotions. Carried on. And this was 2010. England were playing in the World Cup. Remember it very clearly against the USA. And I remember watching a football game with my mum then in a hospice. And my mum died. The only thing I can say is that we were by her bedside. And this was very shortly after my father had died. My mother died. And she died.
So two enormous tragedies.
Two enormous tragedies in very
short order, yes.
So it was, I remember pushing my mum in a wheelchair on oxygen to my dad's funeral.
Golly.
So that was truly the worst experience I think any human being could go through emotionally.
But not something you were able to process.
I wasn't able to process it, and probably more importantly for somebody who suffers with this condition is I was unable to control it, and that was the issue. And there's a control elements to the alcoholic condition. So I then thought this was great because I didn't feel anything. Why did I think it was great? Because it gave me the opportunity to drink more and everyone would feel sorry for me. I wasn't at work now. I decided to withdraw from flying. So this was happy days for me. I could now just drink as much as I like because no one was going to bother me. That's how sick this illness gets. So I then did take up with a young lady who I knew from my childhood, and I always wanted to. I kind of always had designs on her, I think, from a young age, and I totally messed it up. She had a kid, and I was awful. But I wasn't flying around this time. But she suggested that perhaps she needed a bit of help. I was terrible to this lady, and I went to see my GP, who clearly knew what was going on, but he had written these sick notes basically to say that I was off work with stress. And this was when it really started to take a hold. I decided then, having been left an amount of money, and bearing in mind that one of the things we do with this condition is we like to be liked. We have a people-pleasing propensity. So I was giving money away. I was doing all sorts of crazy, displaying really crazy behavior. I decided to go to rehab, but there was a bit of a problem. We didn't have any money. I'd spent all the money.
Oh, Lord.
So how was that going to work? So I thought, I'm going to have a loan for this. And I was starting to get a bit more serious at this point, realizing that we're getting backed into a corner. And my accountant friend was an executor to the will. And he rang me up, knowing that all was not well, and said, we've found some more money in a pension fund, which your parents had. And in order to go to the rehab, the cost of the rehab was £14,000 for 28 days. Now, bearing in mind that the ego was still rife at this time, so I couldn't go to any old rehab. It had to be the Priory Clinic, because that's where all the rock and roll stars went, of course, wasn't it? So I thought it was really screwed up thinking. So it was £14,000. How much do you think was left in this pension fund, which the accountant found for me?
Well, I'm going to guess exactly 14,000.
Exactly £14,000.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly that amount. Is that odd? It's strange. Now, this was the first thought that maybe something else was happening. Now, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual, and I've realized that, there's something greater than me controlling this whole situation. I got away with so much during that time, and I was so lucky to get away with my life, because remember, this condition takes everything and will eventually take you. So I came out of the rehab, and the first thing I did, because the ego was still rife, I decided to test if they'd actually properly fixed me. So I celebrated with a bottle of champagne. Now, if that's not screwed up thinking, then I don't know what is, because I drank this alcohol. Of course, clearly, I was nowhere near aviation. I was nowhere near anything. And I was in a pretty bad state. So the doctor who was looking after me in this rehabilitation clinic gave me a telephone call. And he said, Ian, I'd like you to come in and have a chat. So the first thing I did was I was drinking liters of water, thinking this would hide any sort of alcohol or drug test. I had a shower, and I remember trying to clean myself, but I was really hot and clammy and in a real state. And I was quite bloated and really. So I went in a taxi, and I remember getting a taxi driver to stop and throwing up. And I got to the rehab, and the consultant, who was looking after me there, he said, Ian, sit down, we need to have a chat. And this was the turning point, because he said to me, and he didn't know whether I was flying or not, but he was aware that I had a license to fly an aeroplane, and I was effectively off work with stress. And this is the way you mislead people with this illness. You lie. So he said to me, Ian, you have a choice. You can either stop drinking and fly airplanes, or you can continue to drink and die. Take your choice. Now, you've got 2 weeks, and you need to tell your employer exactly what has been happening. Or you can go to the CAA and explain what's been happening, because if you don't, I will. And that was almost like a mallet over the head. And I was thinking at that time, and this is how screwed up my thinking was, I was wondering how I could manipulate the situation to get a gagging order over this person. So I was speaking to a solicitor friend. He said, yeah, it might be possible, but not realizing this was the guy that saved my life. What I will say is around that time, I should say that just after my parents had died and just before I had this experience of, I had changed employer. I decided to get away from Monarch, and they obviously have since no longer exist, to join the company that I'm with now. And they were, well, considering I was the new boy, I couldn't have wished for anything better, because I went to the union and I said, look, I've got a bit of a problem. And they said, it sounds like you've got a bit of a problem. And they said, well, we need to, there is a drug and alcohol policy in place, as there are with any employer worth their salt. There'll be some sort of drug and alcohol policy. And so my union went to my employer and said, one of your pilots has an issue. And they said, oh, right, okay. And he would like to, this is the most important thing. Is that he would like to self-identify that he has an issue. There's a very big difference between self-identifying and being caught. Because if you get caught under the influence, that's instant dismissal. If you self-identify and say, I've got a problem, then certainly with my employer, and I certainly know for every major airline in the UK, if not Europe, would have a duty of care then to say, okay, because they recognise under the World Health Organization that this condition is an illness, they would then do all they can to help you. And what they did, which I will be forever grateful, is they gave me a second chance. I went to rehab for a second chance, and this time I meant business. I joined the rehab, and what was interesting, there were 7 people then on this. I thought it was a course. I thought that I had to graduate, and a couple of people left. And out of everybody that was on that course in that rehab, one of them was quite an affluent businessman who has been sober now for the same amount of time, and he's gone on to do really well in business, but everybody else has since died from this illness.
You're joking.
No longer with us. So I consider myself to be really lucky, and this wasn't a Priory type posh rock star rehab. This was a gritty, down-to-earth rehab where they also meant business. And if you didn't abide by their rules, you had consequences, which would be to clean a room, even clean a toilet. It was all about humility and instilling in you all that had been lost through my career in misleading people, in having a lifestyle which was totally incompatible with my career.
How do you look back on it now?
I look back at it and I think we have an expression, I thank my higher power, which, yes, for me is God, but doesn't always work for everybody in that sense. But I thank my higher power that my life today is not different. It's massively different. It's a different world. It's a different world that I now reside in. I haven't had a drink for 8 years almost now. And do you know what, Nick? I have no desire to drink ever again. We have an expression. It's a bit like recoiling from a hot stove. You kind of burn yourself once. You don't go anywhere near it a second time. And now, for me, it's about passing the message on to other people. And I'm sure maybe some of your listeners and viewers will identify that it doesn't take a brain surgeon to work out that I'm part of a fellowship, and that fellowship is very close to the front of the telephone book.
Yeah, I understand. And the requirements of being a member, as it were, are you certainly have embraced the opportunity to help others.
Yes, because we have a really lovely expression, and that is, I can only keep what I have by giving it away, by helping other people, by sharing what we call experience, strength, and hope. And I think Balpo, I was reading in their newsletter recently, their magazine called The Log, that actually this illness, 5% of people actually in the world who suffer with alcoholism show outward signs of it. 95% of people are hiding this. You would never know. You would never know. And they probably don't even know themselves. So it's a devastating condition, one from which you never, ever recover from. All you can do is arrest it. But what I will say is that today I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that I've won the lottery and I'm driving an Aston Martin and I'm now chief pilot of Acme Airlines. Not at all. What it means is I now have serenity and I'm now happy with my life. And I'm grateful. I have gratitude.
So is there any advice you can offer to those who are thinking that they might have a problem?
Absolutely. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge that problem. You have to say, yes, I have a problem. Second thing you do then is you ask for help. And you will find that, as I said, I was astonished the moment I admitted this issue, the way everybody came running. Now, remember that it's a condition that you manage. But today, I have a whole new circle of friends. I don't relate at all to the way I was. I'm in a new relationship, which I've been with Kirsty now for 5 years. And she says to me, I could never imagine you drinking. I could never imagine you being the way I described. It's almost as if, I don't mean in the religious sense, but it's almost like being reborn.
Well, that sounds fabulous. Have you been able to reconnect with your feelings?
Yes, yeah, because when you come into recovery, it's this classic expression that they have. We have two issues. Number one, the good news is you get your feelings back. The bad news is you get your feelings back. I start crying now when I see those adverts for the dog's home. So it's you get your feelings back, absolutely. But I have a very, very, very I had a very lucky escape, actually.
Yeah.
I had a very, very lucky escape. What do I have to do now in order to continue on this lifestyle, with this lifestyle? Well, number one, rigorous honesty. Number two, actually more practically, is I have to see the regulatory body, Civil Aviation Authority, every 6 months for a blood test. Occasionally they'll take a hair test to check if there's been any misuse of anything in the meantime. Of course, there hasn't been, and there won't be. But, it's a privilege now. It's a pleasure to go along there and submit to these tests, because every time I'm saying, yes, I'm well. And then they'll write me a letter and say, yeah, you are certified fit.
That's a brilliant story, Ian. But you touched on a new relationship, and I'm going to ask you to cover that in our next chat, because you ended up in hospital for a very different reason. And I think perhaps we'll leave it there and discuss that and how your career is going now in our next chat next week, if that's okay.
Brilliant. Yeah, it'd be a pleasure. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks very much.
Have I ever mentioned that I love that music?
I think so.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's Ian playing the drums in the background there.
Oh yeah, I know, that's makes that really special. What a great I love this interview series, and I can't wait till the next one where you kind of tease some kind of a new relationship.
Yeah, well, of course, it's a story with a very happy ending, thanks to Ian's perseverance and his strength of character. That allowed him to overcome all the problems he's had. He's got one other major problem to overcome, though. We'll find out about that. But I just got to thank Ian so much for having the courage and the strength of character to come out and speak, because I know without even asking that 99.9% of all the airline pilots out there who suffered or had suffered from alcoholism during their career wouldn't want to tell anybody. And Ian is telling us all. And I think it's just an amazing tribute to him. And also just, it's just something to bear in mind, because we know our industry, our lifestyles often circulate around a bit of booze. And it's just worth bearing in mind that not all of us are able to do this in moderation. There are some people who find it very hard to know when to draw the line, and it's not their fault. As he quite rightly says, the World Health Organization defines this as an illness, and it's not something to be looked down upon. It's something to try and support people who have this problem and to help them through it. So I really admire Ian for coming out and telling us all about his life story.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it last week, or last time I heard your plane tales, Captain Nick. First of all, just my respect for this gentleman. It's just amazing. And one of the things that really strikes me is the calmness, the tranquility in his voice, how at peace he is with himself. And what's fascinating about this set of interviews is just kind of, going on that journey with him and seeing him evolve and become, the person he is now. And it's amazing.
And I'm so glad that we have this platform here to share that story, because I'm certain that it's going to help someone else.
Yeah. Even
just
if there's
being able
just
to hear it.
one,
even if it's
person
just
out
one
there.
person.
Yeah, it'll have been.
Yeah,
more
we
than worth it.
pilots are prideful. You just hate to admit when we're wrong, and it's
No,
it's,
no, what are you talking about?
No, not us.
I mean, I'm never wrong.
No.
so-
All type of personalities. No, never.
No, it's completely
and
true.
so it's
True.
it's hard for us to admit when we're wrong, and so this really shines a light on an issue that's important. It's really important to shine a light on this,
Yeah.
Well, stay tuned in for the final installment of the Ian Palmer interviews next week. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
All right. Was it last show or a couple of shows ago? Nick, you were commenting about Professor Jeff's I don't know, question, or you had some questions about gravity or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, I was dissing gravity. Yeah, I thought gravity was rubbish.
Well,
I couldn't understand it because no one's been able to explain it to me.
Well, Jeff got back with us, and he sent us a link to a video, and he's hoping that this is going to help you with that. So here we go.
Good afternoon, APG crew. Physicist Jeff here. Last week, pilot Nick had some questions about gravity, and I felt like I had to respond as a physicist. So what he was asking about, or one of the questions was how gravity works, right? And the Earth, as we know, is spinning. Why don't we actually spin off the surface of the Earth? How are we even able to stay attached to the Earth? I like the kind of playground, merry-go-round analogy. So imagine you're going around.
Just keep imagining.
Merry-go-round. You do have to hold on to the merry-go-round itself, or you go flying off the edge, right? But you think about what happens if you start the merry-go-round really slow. You don't have to hold on very tight. It's only when you're mom or dad starts pushing you around and around faster and faster, that you really have to hold on and risk kind of flying off the edge of that merry-go-round. We call that an accelerating reference frame, you being on the merry-go-round. And we're in a similar situation here on the planet Earth. Now, the Earth spins around, and this beautiful blue line here is the equator. You can figure out how fast you're moving at any point on the Earth by looking at the circumference at your latitude and the period, which is a day. So I can take the radius of the Earth multiplied by 2 pi, that gives me the circumference, divided by the day in terms of seconds, and that gives me approximately how fast I'm moving around the surface. And the Earth really is spinning like this. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west. That means the Earth is going the opposite direction, right? From west to east, like this. And that's significant if you want to launch spaceships, for instance, right? So next week, SpaceX is planning on launching 2 astronauts up to the International Space Station. Well, where would be a good place to launch from? If you are close to the equator, you're moving the fastest because you have the largest distance to go in 24 hours. If you're up here at the pole, you're not moving very fast, actually. So if you're wanting to launch rockets, you want to find somewhere close to the equator to launch them from. So the European Space Agency has a launch facility down here in Kourou. And NASA launches just up here in Florida. So not quite at the equator, but close. And which way do they launch? They launch out over the Atlantic, and that's going to allow them to use the speed of the rotating Earth. The Earth rotates, the air around the Earth close to its surface rotates as well. And so when the rocket is sitting there on the launch pad, it's moving about over 400 meters per second, like this. And that means that it already has a fraction of the speed it needs to be up in orbit around the surface of the Earth. So just something to keep in mind. But as for us and our weight, well, what we could do is we could imagine putting Captain Nick here. We're going to assume Captain Nick is a standard male in the summer, and that means in Canada at least he weighs 206 pounds, 93.4 kilograms. So we're going to put him on the equator and just work out, well, we can work out what his weight is. I guess we've got it already in pounds, 206 pounds. But the acceleration required, because he's going to be moving in a circle, he has to kind of hold on to the Earth or something like that. Now, gravity is what's pulling him down to the surface of the Earth. And there's what we call a normal force keeping him from sinking into the Earth, okay? Now, we're assuming Nick is standing on some like concrete or something like that. If he's in one of those Florida swamps, maybe there's not enough of that force. He is going to sink into the Earth. But if you were to stand Nick on a scale on some level ground there, what you're going to find actually is the weight is not actually equal and opposite to the normal force. There's a slight difference, and there's a net force towards the center of the Earth. So if you go through the math, and you don't all have to do this, but if you do, what you calculate is the scale for a 206-pound person is only going to read 205.2, and there's a 0.4% difference in terms of the scale's reading a little less. Now, if we spin, if we're on another planet, for instance, and the planet is spinning faster, it has a shorter period, then the scale is going to have an even lower reading, okay? But with our planet, the way it turns, there's enough gravity to keep us stuck to the surface of the planet, even though the planet is spinning around pretty fast. So that's just a little explanation there. Now, I know Nick was also interested in gravitational waves. So for instance, when black holes are spiraling in towards one another, the reason they actually spiral in instead of just maintaining a stable orbit is because the mass of the black hole is such that it curves space-time enough that space-time ripples, sends waves out that radiates energy and allows the black holes to spiral in again. But that's kind of a large topic of conversation. I didn't think I could quite get to it here. Anyway, love the show. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Brilliant.
So do you have any questions now? I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's a heavy subject, but is it clear now?
Yeah. I mean,
I
I'd
mean-
love to be somewhere on the screen, but don't worry about that.
Oh,
we
we're
have
hoping
to
we
say-
would like to take you to the equator and leave you there.
Now, what I'd like to do is to work out if I have a weighing machine at the equator and I weigh X amount, presumably if I take myself up to one of the poles with my weighing machine, I'll weigh a lot less. So does that mean Inuits are lighter, weigh less than Africans who live in the equator? And my other question is, if you're flying an airplane around the pole, and then you fly it down to the equator, do you use more fuel when you're at the equator because your aircraft weighs more?
Your weight is based on how far you are from the center of the Earth. So, and the Earth is not a perfect sphere. So, like if you're at the top of Mount Everest, you're going to weigh slightly different than you would at sea level. If you're at the North Pole versus the South Pole.
Hang on a minute. He said that because of centripetal force, you're going to weigh more at the equator than you would up near the pole.
I don't see how that could work. I don't think so.
So,
Well, who's the doctor?
It's all
Well-
Greek to me. I took a nap. I was waiting.
part of it, but it actually
was-
does have a lot to do with mass. So the mass of the planet and how
Yeah,
far.
well, I
you
know
are
you'd
from
have the
center
same
of that.
mass. I'm talking about weight.
No, not
Like
you,
this-
but I mean the gravity is related. That's
I
terrible.
love this. This is fascinating. And I'd also like to know if you try and take off on a freewheeling conveyor belt.
Oh, are we going back to this?
Oh, no.
Again? Nick, I hate you.
Let's not do that one again.
It's bad.
I'm going to set it up on my
love
treadmill.
it.
Now that I actually have a treadmill, we're going to set up this experiment. And see.
Exactly
How
right.
many years
I
ago
wanna-
was that?
All right.
I would know the answer to
I don't
that.
know. Why are we dragging this back up again?
So, hey, look, I really would appreciate all the effort he went into
was
with
Rick
the
here for
globe
that
and everything.
Yeah,
that was
think so.
very good, very
Yeah.
intuitive. That was.
No, I thought the
marvelous.
Earth was flat. So all this.
So I think, honestly, I think that Nick just wants you, Dr. Jeff, to send us more videos because he really enjoys listening to you explain all this stuff.
Oh, absolutely, and I really
was
do.
great.
I want to know.
And we do. All of us do.
Why I can't see these gravity waves that seem to be holding me on to the Earth, despite the fact that I'm belting around at 400 odd meters per second. That's a lot.
I wish I had some kind of effect where I could just launch Nick up out of his seat and out of the screen and go, oh, there he goes.
Well,
There
if
he
you're
goes.
moving that fast, Nick, if you hover above the Earth's surface, why don't you end up moving along at that speed?
For the same reason the atmosphere gets carried along. Because I'm in the air, it's being carried along. But there you go. It's very kind of you to try and explain it. But I'm afraid I'm amongst a bunch of dunderheads, and trying to get it through to them is impossible. So,
Huh?
What?
What are you talking about? Oh, thank you very much, Jeff, for sending that in. You're a true sport and very smart man.
Yeah.
Which is why we were all wondering why he listens to the show. But we'll leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? We got this from Ivor, and I think I have some music that I play for that, but I can't seem to find it right offhand. So I'll just add it in post. The Adventures of, well, no, this is just Ivor. Never mind. Dear airline pilot people, I've been listening to other podcasts.
Oh,
Whoa.
for shame.
I admit it. I'm slightly ashamed of myself. Not much, but a little. One of the shows I found was a little show called Airline Care Home Guy. The main protagonist in this little drama is a grumpy old retired pilot called Mick Henderson. He used to fly for some weird outfit called Vestal Pacific or something like that. Anyway, all he does is bang on about when I was a young lad, we did it this way, and how brilliant he was, and when he went on an exchange with the Austrian Air Force. Lord help them. his most frequent visitor is an aging but undoubtedly handsome fellow called Jeff Nelson. Apparently, he is of Swedish descent. But to his credit, Jeff listens to Grumpy Mick's stories with patience and air of disbelief, and appears that Jeff has been putting up with this nonsense for a very long time. But he is a man of faith and therefore a good and patient man. And he needs to be, for every week the Grumpy one bangs on about plane fails, whatever they are. But he usually does it for 20 minutes each week. Poor Jeff, having to listen to the ramblings of this cantankerous old git every week. But he's not on his own. There are other visitors. One is a younger chap called Diana. Yes, we all think it's a girl's name, but that's his name. Anywho, Diana visits, listens, and joins in the conversation. Now these old codgers mostly talk about airplanes and how great they are at flying them. Now I believe that Dana might be a pilot too, but he mostly talks about motorbikes and boats. He also dives, whatever that is, TWSS. But it makes a change from, quote, "In my day, we hand flew all the time." This is a common theme with the old boys. Yes, it is. Another visitor to the care home for degenerate old pilots is a chap called Hawaii Dick. This is an interesting character, another bloody pilot, but he works for an airline that doesn't have windows for the passengers to look out of. Now, I don't know what shenanigans are going on with this boy's work, but the less said, the better. But the old boys just love to hear about his Delta P, the dirty old buggers. Wait, somebody said Delta P.
There you go.
And finally, they're kept in place by Dr. Stephen, who is, would that be the proper pronunciation? Or Dr. Stefan, maybe?
Either one.
Either way.
Yeah.
Just depends.
Who is unsurprisingly a lady and a doctor, but a doctor that flies. Lord help us all. Another pilot, just what we need. Dr. Stefan doesn't appear to have a modicum of sense, unlike the others.
Doesn't?
No, it does. I'm
Does.
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That was a
Freudian slip.
Freudian, yeah. Dr. Stefan does appear to have a modicum of sense, unlike the others, and she therefore keeps the show on the road or in the air. See what I did there? And so to round it up, it's an interesting-ish show, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's too familiar to something else. I can't think what, but something very similar. Also, it goes on and on and on and on, 3 hours sometimes, occasionally more. Unbelievable, I know, but it's true. So to finish, I won't provide a link to this podcast. You have all got better things to do with your lives. Remember, people, wet paint needs to be watched drying. So at all costs, avoid this show. Who needs more pilots telling the world about how great pilots are? So nighty night from Ivor. I love you all, some more than others, and with good reason.
This is brilliant. Wow. That is awesome.
Love
That
you.
He
sounds
wouldn't be
a lot-
Welsh perchance, would he?
Pardon me? Yeah.
He wouldn't be Welsh perchance, would he?
Good
So
question.
I'm wondering, I don't know, that show kind of sounds a little familiar to me, but I don't know. Well, I might check it
I can't
out.
put my finger on it.
Yeah.
Great.
Airplane Geeks?
Yeah, that's it. That's got to be it.
Well, you certainly need to have a lot of spare time.
Or PTUK, maybe. I don't know.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nick, would you do the honor of reading this feedback from Blaster Bill?
Most certainly. Oh, golly, the print's awfully small.
Well, you can select it all and then change
bigger.
the font size. Or here, I can do that
I'll
for
just move a bit closer.
you. Okay.
A lot closer.
What a magnifying glass.
It's like,
Yeah,
Well, I'm going to see if I can help him, but I might mess him up if I do this.
you probably will know, you.
Oh,
What are you going to do?
let's see. There we go. Now make some time. You have to hit your refresh or sync thing up at the top bar to get the newer version. Because it'd be
The
easier for
cause
me to
of
read.
this in unexpected sync error is listed below.
Oh no. Well, that was not a good idea.
Okay,
My
let
bad.
me give it
Nick,
a go.
did I send you my new computer or my old computer already? Did it arrive already?
No,
Sounds like something my old computer would do.
Format.
Just make
God.
the screen
Rubbish.
bigger.
I'll read it. Dear Captain Nick, I heard the very sad news about your dad, Captain Andy Anderson, and wanted to send you my sincere condolences. I also listened to APG 425 and your installment of Plain Tales, an honourable homage to your dad, which I was interested to hear. A fitting tribute to your dad's legacy and what he meant to you. I'm so very sorry that you couldn't travel to be with him in his final days, and completely understand your frustration about being in the UK whilst your dad was in Australia. I was thrilled when you interviewed your dad about his flying days and very much enjoyed the photos in your homage of the distinguished Captain Anderson with his RAAF wings and ribbons. And of course, those wonderful photos, especially of Captain Anderson in front of that magnificent British-built Vickers VC-10. How fitting. Just as an aside, I was a very young boy when I took that with my Brownie camera. So that was one of mine. If I may, I'd like to share my story of losing my dad in 1987 in the hopes that it will assuage your grief about your dad's passing. It has a similar perspective to yours. My dad is the reason I'm an airline pilot today. He was a US Navy pilot who flew the Lockheed P-2V Neptune and the P-3A Orion during the Cold War, harassing Soviet submarines. His last posting at Naval Air Station Jacksonville in Florida was due to end in retirement, change of command, in late May of '87, after 30 years of military service. I was a junior in college in North Carolina and was completing final semester exams, and once finished, was going to join my dad in Jacksonville. I very much looked forward to these visits because it gave me much needed personal time with my dad. We had stayed together in bases all over the US and traveled to many places together. My dad drove a 1983 Jaguar XJ6 sedan, which I enjoyed driving as well. When we were together and I was of driving age, I always enjoyed speeding away with his car and joyriding around town while he worked. I was set to fly from Charlotte to Jacksonville on Monday, and my dad phoned me up to tell me he wanted me to come Wednesday instead because he needed the car Monday and Tuesday and would not be allowing me to drive it while he worked on base. So I changed flights to Wednesday, May the 13th. I woke up that morning to a family member telling me that my dad was involved in a car accident and was in hospital. I was stunned and shocked. I was due to leave for the airport in a couple of hours anyway, so I got dressed and ready to depart. Then came the news that my dad had passed away, not from the accident, but from a massive heart attack. My mother and uncle and I flew to Jacksonville, and we went to the hospital on base. The doctors told us that they worked on him for an hour before ending their efforts to revive him. I was led into a room where the doctor gave me his personal effects. This was extremely hard for me, as there on a table were his wallet, his insignia, his signet ring, his watch, and his dog tags. There was a manila folder with his command pin, his ribbons, and one last item, which, when it was retrieved, made me completely break down in tears, realizing he was truly gone from the earth. This item was his pair of gold navy wings. I hadn't really known or accepted he was gone until that moment, and it was probably the most excruciating thing I've ever done, accepting his personal effects. I was 22 years old. Dad was 52. He died 2 weeks before his retirement date from the Navy. I was now fatherless, and I'm sure you'll agree that no one can replace that important figure in your life. I was so frustrated that I didn't arrive 2 days prior on Monday, instead of today after he had lost his life. It would haunt me for a few years until I realized he wouldn't want me to dwell on it or be miserable. As a parent, I now realize how important it is to have the ultimate desire for our children to be happy. I never got to share anything in my adult life with him. My college graduation, my flight training, my journey to become an airline pilot, my marriage, or becoming a dad myself with 2 children. Captain Nick, you are blessed with a father who lived a long, prosperous, and distinguished life, who got to see you do everything up until your own retirement. I'm so envious of you, and so thankful that your dad got to see you grow up and serve in Her Majesty's Armed Services and at Acme Red, we can call it Virgin nowadays, and have your own family. I'm 100% certain he was proud of you and your numerous accomplishments, which, as you know, is a son's #1 goal, to make his dad proud. You succeeded, and his legacy endures. I congratulate you on your successful career and on making your dad smile. I also want to extend my deepest sympathies to you and your family during this difficult time. I wish you could have been there too, believe me. As far as Captain Andy Anderson, may he rest in eternal peace after such a long, prosperous life indeed. Mission accomplished. May he have blue skies and tailwinds. To fly west, my friend, is a flight we must all take for a final check. Sincerest regards, Blaster Bill, Los Angeles. Boeing 737 Captain. Thank you very much indeed, Blaster. That's got me all choked up now.
Yeah,
and he also
you're
included
not the only one.
Yeah. He also included a photo of his father. Let's see. Captain William E. Price II, U.S. Navy Reserve, born August 7th, 1934. In Charlotte, North Carolina. He died May 13th, 1987 in Jacksonville. Yeah, very handsome man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love the picture. Thanks for
Yeah.
sending it. And thanks
What a
for the
great
story.
That's very emotional. Well read, Nick. You
Yeah, well written,
You did
Master.
that very nicely.
Yeah, great words. Thank you, Blaster. Very nice. Well, people stop sending me things like this.
Well, that's what we like to do here.
My emotions on this podcast have just done an absolute roller coaster from joyful highs, sad moments to, this is hard work.
And the disappointment of having to deal with us every week.
I think I can get over that, don't we?
That's not too emotionally taxing.
Yeah,
No.
but that's what we
No,
like to
I-
do here. We like to make you all cry out there.
Yeah. Sorry, I've recovered myself here. So thank you, Blaster Bill, for sending that in. It was really nice to hear those memories of your dad. Sounds like the two of you had a great relationship. I'm going to cry again.
Oh, man. Ooh.
Yeah. Or perhaps with that, we should continue then to something else in the news. So now we're getting very close to the end of our show, within 10 minutes. And I guess we should just move right on into, Nick, you had a question from someone in episode 425 concerning the differences between the RAF and the U.S. Air Force. And Jim, just a navigator, made some audio feedback. He said this question touched a nerve because the 3 years I spent in England as an EF-111 EWO, electronic warfare officer were a major highlight of my 20 years in the Air Force. And he sent us two actually dealing with relationship comparison between the U.S. Air Force versus the Royal Air Force, and also one regarding U.S. Air Force versus Royal Navy. So he had a chance to spend some time with both. And I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll play the first one, the U.S. Air Force versus RAF, on this episode, and then we'll save the second audio for our next show. So take it away, Jim.
Hello, Captain Jeff and your whole cockpit crew. This is Jim, just a humble navigator from Texas, and I'm commenting on episode 425, the question from JJ Not Pittsburgh, asking the difference between the Royal Air Force and the U.S. Air Force. I do have some experience in this regard because I did spend 3 years in RAF Upper Hayford as an electronic warfare officer in EF-111 Ravens. I wound up as the wing EWO for both the Ravens and the Compass Call C-130 communications jammer. So I had the opportunity to visit a lot of other units from NATO, and particularly a lot of interaction with the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy. To avoid this recording becoming way too long, I'll tell you my observations about the Royal Air Force first, and maybe I'll make a part two about the differences with the Royal Navy. Captain Nick mentions one difference that's definitely there: respect for what we consider rules and what they consider suggestions. For example, we often flew up the English Channel from central England north. We'd turn left at Lucas to go jam an RAF radar. The Lucas F-4s would sometimes screw with us by kind of diving down on us to see if they could get us to react. We were supposed to have a 1,000-foot safety bubble around airplanes when you wanted to mess with them like that. I think their eyeball calibrations left a little bit to be desired because their concept of 1,000 feet was quite a bit different than mine. And they always attacked from the upper right-hand side because they knew that there wasn't a pilot in the right seat. The next time I run into their chief of staff, I'm going to suggest they test eyeball calibration for their new pilots because they seem to need a little work with that. I was at some after-work social gathering of some kind. I don't remember why. I think it was at a NATO school, but there was a guy in a flight suit there that said 42 Squadron. It said 42 Squadron on it. I was in the 42nd Electronic Combat Squadron, so naturally I wanted to talk to the guy. It turned out he was a RAF pilot in Nimrods, and he flew for their 42 Squadron. I flew for the 42nd Squadron because they spell out the letters one by one for 2 Squadron, as opposed to us who would be 42nd Squadron. The other thing I noticed about this particular Nimrod pilot was he was incredibly old. Talking to him, it turns out that in the Royal Air Force, you can be 50 years old, be a squadron leader, which is the same as I was, a major in the Air Force at that time. And you just fly airplanes. That's what you do. You come to work, fly airplanes, go home. That's it. You are not competing to be chief of staff of the Air Force, which is something every U.S. Air Force officer is expected to do. And when that American Air Force officer gets to the point where he's not chief of staff material, we kick him out or retire him. So that's another big difference. We kind of exchanged visits with the Canberra ECM Squadron. I forget their designation. I was allowed to crawl around in their airplane. It was interesting. It felt very, very World War II-ish in the general way it was laid out, the way the front seats were arranged and the bubble canopy. They had some pretty cool electronic toys in there. A lot of the Canberra systems itself looked right out of World War II. A lot of big switches, big round dials, Frankenstein switches. It was a very interesting airplane. I liked those guys a lot. They were a lot of fun. And in the interest of keeping this from not going all day, which I certainly could easily do, I'll just mention one other thing that I don't even think the RAF guys themselves realize. The Royal Air Force fighter community is held in high esteem by the U.S. Air Force fighter community. This has to do with the fact that they are kind of kept on a loose leash, and they're kind of unpredictable, maybe than another Air Force might be. I'm looking at you, France. The RAF does a lot with a little bit, and that's always impressive. They can react pretty fast because they are a small service, and they take advantage of that in lots of lots of different ways. Just listen to some of the stories about the Falklands War. But I think a big part of the Royal Air Force reputation and culture dates back to World War II. It was mainly the Royal Air Force that, when Britain stood alone for 2 years, standing between the free world and Hitler, the Royal Navy and especially the Royal Air Force were the wall that stood between the rest of the free world and Hitler. They fought the Nazis. They were usually outnumbered. Technically, many of their planes were inferior to the Germans, but they just kept coming, and the Germans couldn't figure out how they kept coming back and back and back when, by all logic, they should have already been wiped out. As polite and reserved as the typical RAF officer is when he's not drunk, they are really a bunch of badasses. I'm very glad that we're on the same side, because I wouldn't want to go up against the Royal Air Force, particularly not anything close to equal numbers, if I didn't have to. So God bless the RAF. This is Jim in Texas. Thank you for listening.
What'd you think about that, Nick?
I love that. Jim, that's absolutely brilliant. 360 Squadron were the squadron you couldn't quite remember. They were the jammers. And let us not forget that the American Air Force also had Canberras. So whilst they looked like something built in the Second World War, you guys flew them as well. I'm trying to think, B-57s you called them or something? Yes. Yeah, built under license. I'm sure you totted yours up and didn't have all those steam-driven valves and things. But yeah, he's quite right. In a smaller Air Force, you can possibly react a bit quicker. And I think a hard-earned disrespect for authority is something of a watchword that the RAF pilots often use, which is why we always, fighter pilots certainly, dress with our top buttons undone, because in uniform, when you're always supposed to have your top, all the buttons done properly up, the fighter pilots didn't quite like sticking to all the traditions of the Air Force and used to purposely leave their top buttons undone. Used to annoy the our senior officers enormously. By the way, if I just put this one picture up, we mentioned intercepts and the Russians and flying F-4s. I recently found this photograph, and it's his. You remember me mentioning I used to intercept bears? I always wonder what it looked like from the other side. Well, this is what it looks like from the other side. Oh, now I can't. It's a background there. Damn.
Oh, it's a background?
Yeah, now I put it in the wrong spot. That was silly of me, wasn't it? Let me just change that and make it a
regular overlay.
An overlay.
It's a nice background, though.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, see if we can there we go. That apparently is a picture of a Phantom taken from a bear bomber.
Oh.
Oh, I see now what he's talking about, that eyeball calibration.
Yes. The
Was that 1,000 feet
bubble.
right there?
Yeah, 1,000 feet. Yeah, exactly right. So I must acknowledge and thank the I can't remember his name. It was a Russian name, of the fine Russian bear crew member who put that up on a site I know of. So that was great.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a great photo to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
So what do you say about the officers when they weren't drunk, they were badasses?
Yeah.
I love that.
So is Nick always drunk?
Oh, I hope so.
Probably.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Jim. And then we'll hear how he his experience with and how he feels about the Royal Navy.
You know what the Royal Navy always used to say about the Air Force?
What's that?
We didn't have traditions. We just had bad habits.
The Air Force does?
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, the Navy are very much the older service.
Yeah. You guys are just young pups, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Howard, just a navigator, he calls himself. And that is going to be it for today. I'm sorry that we didn't play a lot of feedback, but it was a kind of a special show in a way. And thank you for bearing with all of us regarding the other stuff. And next week we have a chock full feedback notebook, and I'm sure we'll be getting more great feedback from you all. And you can do you can send us feedback by sending it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. You can go to our website, a bunch of different ways to contact us there and send us feedback. And let's see, speaking of the website, lots of great stuff there to learn about the crew and the community, and more information about plane tales. We have the APG library, merchandise, so much more. So please check out the airlinepilotguy.com website, and we're on social media.
We are. Please head over to Twitter, and you can find us at APG Crew. All of our individual Twitter information is pinned to the top of the page. That's probably the best place to find out when we're going to be recording these episodes live, and if we make any last-minute schedule changes to those live recordings. You can also head over to facebook.com/airlinepilotguy. Please see us there. Lots of good information, news stories, aviation-related things being shared by the community, and also Instagram at APG Crew. So look forward to seeing you on the social medias.
Excellent. And what about Hillel? Do you think he's ready?
I think I should. I think.
We turn on the.
I thought I heard the shower running. Yeah.
Hillel. Wait, I think he's turned up. Hillel, it's time for the Slack.
Okay, but I'm dripping wet.
Well, I hope he towels off before he gets
Put
here.
the towel on at least.
There's a
APG listeners,
lot of
join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. Appreciate all the help.
No, wait, Jeff. I'm social distancing.
Oh, okay.
Good job.
And with that, again, thanks everybody for watching, listening, reviewing, and telling your friends all about the APG. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all, and so long, Mad Dog.
Yes. Didn't hear you, Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I was still muted. See y'all next week. It's going to be a good one.
Bye, everybody. Those graveyards are waiting.
R.I.P. the mighty dog. Bye, guys.
Good night, all.
One more time.
Good night, all.
Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun.
How do you have a song for everything?
I know.
And please tell me you're
I
saving
know.
that for future reference.
He's still recording.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear.
What about the Grim Reaper of airline fleets?
Although I
Oh,
was going to
yeah.
say, if you stick with an aircraft type for 18 years and then it retires, I don't know that that's.
I don't know that one.
I don't think we can pin that one on you.
It was
Yeah,
originally
that's not-
supposed to retire
No.
in 05.
I mean,
Now-
if you jumped on
now
it and then
if-
it immediately retired, like
Go to the
Well-
220, and then they call it next year. Then it's all you.
yes.
But as Dana just said, I don't think you heard him. When I originally did
I heard
displace
2005.
it, they were talking about 2005 retirement.
No, it was supposed to retire in 2005. Wasn't even
Yeah.
talking about it. It was slated
No?
to retire in 2005.
So,
There you go.
you just picked an aircraft with good endurance.
So
I just love that picture of you through the cockpit window, and I think
Yeah.
we ought to call it Captain Jeff and Dana retire from the Mad Dog or something like that. So let's
Yes.
have your names as the title.
okay. Cool.
I concur.
Agree.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, Thanks everybody in the chat room for hanging out with us today, and hope to see you again next week. We love you. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.